Okay. Jay Clark, Truth Finder, 9mm. Thank you so much for joining us over here. Hey, Deline, how are you? I'm just grabbing the audio. Hey, Daylight, thank you for joining us. See, no rush is awesome. You are here at all honesty. Thank you, Daylight. I appreciate that. Okay, everything else. Hey, Gigi, how are you? Speed this up a little bit. Okay, that way it won't take us long. All right. Make sure that your chat is on live chat. And if you haven't done so, hit the thumbs up. I'm fixing to go ahead and get the audio started. I almost forgot to put the wall up. So let me do that. Gigi, yes, ma'am. I am doing good. Okay. So the wall is up. Now I got to make sure that the shares. Hey, Mr. Got Lost, how are you? Here we go.
Says the James and Elena story, and then it.
Each one has
Daylight.
well,
I
one witness
wish
has
whenever
two exhibits. The other one would have one exhibit. They are summary exhibits. They were disclosed on the state's
Tammy and Charles on there
discovery
as well.
or exhibit disclosure previously. They are based on information and evidence that has been in discovery, most of which, if not all, was provided through the first discovery. I can provide more on exactly what those are, but that's the timing of when they would come in, which is why the state had requested.
All right, so I'm
the
fixing to get it
opportunity to maybe
started,
hear
and then
defense's
while it's
objection on
playing,
those
I'm
to
going to mute
determine
out.
if they needed to be modified in
Please
part,
let
if
me
they were
know
going to be
if y'all
allowed,
can hear it,
or if they were simply just not
give
going to
me
be
a
allowed.
thumbs
So we
up
could make the
or
appropriate
something like that.
modifications and or arrangements.
Okay, why don't we hear some argument on them this morning, and then I won't likely make a ruling this morning given the timeliness of the motions and the fact that they're not being offered by the witness who's currently on the stand. Let me just inquire of the defense. All right, we're on the record on KCR 22-21-1624, State of Idaho versus Lorraine Vallow. This is continuing jury trial. The state's in its case in chief. Court's advised the jurors are all here and present. They're not in the courtroom yet this morning. The state's here present through the prosecution. The defendant is also present, as well as the defense attorneys. And the court's advised the state had a request to hear a sua sponte motion this morning, apparently, before we bring the jurors in.
Your Honor, what the state requested is we had submitted some summary exhibits to defense. It's my understanding they're going to have an objection to those. We were hoping to take that matter up with the court in order to modify those exhibits if required.
All right. Probably the best I could do at this point is see proffers on what the exhibits are. We've briefly reviewed them, but they didn't come through into the court until early this morning. And so I haven't had time to review in any detail the exhibits, but if you want to put any objections on the record at this point, I'll take that under advisement. At what point would these exhibits be coming in or being offered?
They would be offered through the next witnesses that the state would intend to call after Mr. Hart completes his testimony. So there's two different witnesses. Each one has, well, one witness has two exhibits. The other one would have one exhibit. They are summary exhibits. They were disclosed on the state's discovery or exhibit disclosure previously. They are based on information and evidence that has been in discovery, most of which, if not all, was provided through the first discovery. I can provide more on exactly what those are, but that's the timing of when they would come in, which is why the state had requested the opportunity to maybe hear defense's objection on those to determine if they needed to be modified in part, if they were going to be allowed, or if they were simply just not going to be allowed. So we could make the appropriate modifications and or arrangements.
Okay, why don't we hear some argument on them this morning, and then I won't likely make a ruling this morning given the timeliness of the motions and the fact that they're not being offered by the witness who's currently on the stand. Let me just inquire of the defense who will be making argument this morning. Mr. Archibald?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Have you reviewed these three proposed exhibits?
Yes.
And what is your objection to the proposed exhibits?
So these exhibits are from Nicholas Edwards. He's a lead investigator at the Office of the Attorney General. What he does is he picks and chooses from police reports and submits arguments that have not been admitted as evidence in this trial. These exhibits were not disclosed prior to March 20th, 2023, the discovery cutoff date. I had never seen it before, neither had my co-counsel, neither had my investigator. The exhibits contain argument. The exhibit contains quotes from police reports that typically police reports are not admitted as evidence. The exhibit contains interviews with witnesses, and the witnesses have not stated certain things as they stated in their police report or their interview. But so this report contains quotes from interviews that have not been admitted as evidence. The report is cumulative. It repeats what has already been presented. So what the state is doing here is similar to Doug Hart, who's on the stand now. The state is picking and choosing. Hey, jury, this is really important. Consider this. The prosecutor keeps asking the witness, so what is relevant out of these 150,000 texts? And relevance is a legal conclusion for the court. It's not up to a witness to determine what's relevant and what's not relevant. So this evidence invades the province of the jury. This for the state's witnesses and for the prosecutor to keep asking what is relevant, that's the court's decision what's relevant, not a witness's, not the prosecutor's. So these exhibits are improper. Those are our objections. I would note that we don't have a report from Nick Edwards. We don't have a report from him. So for them to say this is a summary of the entire trial, that's for the state to put on their summary during closing arguments, not for them to call a witness to make their closing argument for them.
All right, I will hear response. Before I do, I will say I reviewed quickly some of the exhibits, and quite frankly, I do share some of the concerns raised by the defense. And there's a couple of rules I'd like to have the state keep in mind when presenting argument. And I'm just letting you know what I'm thinking as I look at these. First of all, when you purport to enter things through Rule of Evidence 1006 as a summary, be aware of what that rule says. The rule says it's narrowed to just the circumstance where a summary is allowed to prove the content of voluminous writings, recordings, or photographs that cannot be conveniently examined in court. So for example, I saw the one exhibit says the James and Elena story, and then it's got the entire James and Elena story. Now, if you're going to say that comes in as a summary, you can't use Rule 1006 to summarize something too voluminous to be conveniently examined and then put the entire story verbatim under Rule 1006. That's the opposite of what the rule says. And so the question then is, under what rule would the publishing of that entire story come in? And it may come in under other rules, but I don't think that in particular would be admissible under Rule 1006. The other rule I'd like you to keep in mind is the Rule 612 of Idaho Rules of Evidence, which is using a writing or object used to refresh a witness's memory. So if you've got witnesses who have essentially, what it looks like to me, maybe summarize their testimony, put it together on slides, come in and read off the slides they summarize, I don't see how that's any different than simply reading out of a report, which Rule 612 doesn't allow and goes against the way witnesses are supposed to testify just from their memory about the personal knowledge, and not be able to sort of prepackage their testimony, put it together into a presentation, call it a Rule 1006, and then read what their summary of their testimony is before they've just offered that testimony at trial. So I do see that as a concern on both of these, in the argument section as well. When I look at the slides again, it appears to me packaged up as sort of a first bite at the apple to closing argument coming through a witness and not through the state drawing all the evidence together, which is allowed in argument, but only in closing argument. So I haven't made any formal ruling on the exhibits, but I'm just telling you out loud my concerns I see with the exhibits as I glanced at them this morning, and I only had about 10 minutes to look through them quickly. So with my concerns in mind then and the objections of the defense, if the state would like to offer any argument, then I'll consider the matter under advisement, make a more thorough review of the exhibits before making any ruling, and let the state know where we stand on those exhibits.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state's position on these is that they are actually summary exhibits. They were identified on the exhibit list that was provided in March before the deadline. The state's understanding was the instruction was the summary exhibits would have to be provided 24 hours in advance, not that the actual exhibit itself had to be provided by the cutoff. That was never understanding the parties were operating under. In addition, while I do understand defense's concerns, or some of them, I would indicate the only statements that are quoted are statements of the defendant. Statements of a party opponent are allowed, generally speaking, to be used in a trial where they are the party opponent. So the defendant's statements would be allowable. Further, with regard to, and first going through the Edwards exhibit, the state's position is the defendant has challenged the investigation. They've specifically challenged through cross-examination that a thorough investigation was not completed. Investigator Edwards specifically did follow up on some of the things that are being challenged. I think going through his investigation, what he concluded, the process he followed, why he did what he did next in his investigation is allowable testimony. I don't think that's the same as a closing argument and drawing the pieces together. And I think where that has been challenged, it would not be needlessly cumulative. And specifically the test on cumulative evidence, I did some research based on knowing the defense was going to make that objection. And in Idaho, that's what's quoted time and time again and in the Ninth Circuit, that the test is whether it's needless. If it's needlessly submitted or admitted, that's when the problem comes in. And in looking through the case law that I could find, there was only one case where they had determined it was cumulative evidence. In that particular case, it was evidence that did not go directly to the crime or the state's case in chief. It was kind of some collateral evidence that they were trying to use to show that the defendant had a propensity to act in a certain way. And at some point, the court said, okay, that went too far. You shouldn't have allowed these additional witnesses to keep talking about the defendant's propensity to act in a certain way. Trying to find the case with the quote. State v. Wynn, 121 Idaho 850 dealt with an argument that some photos that were submitted or admitted of a victim were cumulative. The court determined that they were not, that the trial court had discretion to admit them, and specifically found the trial court has discretion to admit into evidence photographs of the victim in a homicide case as an aid to the jury in arriving at a fair understanding of the evidence as proof of the corpus delicti, the extent of the injury, the condition of the body, and for their bearing on the question of the degree and atrociousness of the crime. In State v. Blackstead, 126 Idaho 14, the court specifically found statements by witnesses which corroborate the facts to which another has already testified are not necessarily inadmissible because they are cumulative. Rules of Evidence 403 prohibits the introduction of needlessly cumulative evidence. In this particular case, they found there was no merit in the argument that this evidence was needless. The entire tenor of Blackstead's defense was that the victim had recently fabricated the allegations against him for the purpose of staying at the treatment facility or being placed with her stepmother rather than returning to her natural mother. Such an implication of recent fabrication gives importance to evidence corroborating the victim's testimony. Being placed with her stepmother rather than returning to her natural mother. Such an implication of recent fabrication gives importance to evidence corroborating the victim's testimony that she had mentioned the defendant's misconduct to someone within days of the occurrence. Similarly, as I've stated in this case, the defense has attacked the investigation or lack of investigation. And I think given that, the testimony and the exhibit would not be needlessly cumulative. Further, the state's position would be that exhibit is not a summary of the entire trial. It's a summary of the investigation conducted by Investigator Edwards and would respond to some of those challenges made. With regard to the iCloud account that would be an exhibit proposed to be admitted with Ms. Heidemann, the state's position would be that it actually would be a summary exhibit. The reason why, as I do recognize the court's concern that it's the entire James and Elena, the reason the state sees that as a summary exhibit is it is contained within several different writings. So it is contained within the iCloud accounts. Those iCloud accounts have already been submitted, but it is spread throughout. So the James and Elena story, what I would offer to the court is it was sent through several different messages and different means of messages through email or text. So that's where the state would see it as a summary exhibit in summarizing what's been pulled from those iCloud accounts. Again, without going through the entire iCloud account, it's a summary of that story pulled from there. In addition to that,
but what's in there, I understand. It's not a summary of the story. It is the story, the entire story, correct?
Correct. It's a summary of the iCloud account would be the state's position.
And what would be the relevancy of publishing the entire story?
So that story played into the investigation. And again, proffering this is that it played into the investigation in the sense that what the investigators did was once that story was located and pulled, they actually went back through and were able to determine things that were occurring in real life that reflected directly to the story. That played into the investigation and the underlying motive in one of the underlying motives in this case. So I think it is directly relevant given what it allowed investigators and provided investigators the ability to do through the investigation, as well as going directly towards one of the underlying motives in this matter.
Okay, and I was just reviewing again, there's nothing about the motive there that you're referring to in any of the overt acts listed in the indictment.
Your Honor, I think one of the motives specifically talked about, or one of the theories of the state's case, would be that this dealt with an affair, an underlying affair that was going on. And the James and Elena story would demonstrate and establish that, especially given that some of the events in there absolutely corroborate with things going on in real life, that would be a mirror of what was going on. And so we think it absolutely does go to the affair motive and is some of the best evidence regarding that affair motive.
Okay.
And also their future together and the steps to get together are contained within that story. And again, then can be corroborated by events occurring in real time. There was one more exhibit that was not mentioned by the defense or the court, and that was a timeline prepared by Ms. Heidemann in anticipation of use with her testimony. I'm not sure what the objection is on that one, but the state would similarly offer that it is a summary exhibit provided Ms. Heidemann's role in the case, what she discovered, some of the actions that were taken. And it is a summary. As we've said repeatedly, the amount of discovery in this case is massive. Some individuals played a very large role in reviewing large portions of it, including the cell phone records, location data, all those other documents.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Blake. And on the timeline, maybe I'll ask the defense if they have a specific objection on that. And my concerns were more in relation to the other two exhibits, not the timeline. Let me hear a reply argument, if you would, from the defense, including whether or not you have any specific objection to that third proposed exhibit of the timeline. And you can also address any response to the state's response to your argument on the first two.
Yes, we're objecting to the timeline. The timeline, I can't count how many witnesses they have presented through this last 6 weeks of timelines. And so it is cumulative. So there's nothing original in there. And so, yes, we object to the timeline. I would also point out that the state kind of makes my position here that they're cherry picking on this evidence. They have now stated, they've gone to this witness, Nick Edwards, and told him what the defense's position is about holes in the investigation. So this witness has crafted their exhibit to fill in what the defense has been stating over the course of this trial. So I think that in and of itself tells the court what they're doing here, that this is not a summary of Nick Edwards' investigation. This is a closing argument for the state to put in through a witness what they believe is to be relevant to the jury. So they've gone to this witness, Nick Edwards, and said, this is what the defense is saying during this trial. And so can you fill in those gaps for us? And that's improper. And that's not based upon Mr. Edwards' investigation. And so that's why we're objecting.
Okay.
And Your Honor, if I may respond briefly to that.
Just briefly, yes.
Thank you. The state does take issue with the complete misrepresentation of what the state said, or any indication that the state has improperly had discussions with witnesses. That is absolutely not what the state said. What the state has indicated is that is a summary exhibit of Investigator Edwards. In no way did the state meet with him and tell him what we wanted him to say. That is his investigation. It would be his testimony. What the state had indicated was based on objections and questions asked by the defense. We believe that his testimony would not be needlessly cumulative. In no way did we indicate anything otherwise, and I take issue with the fact that that's what's being presented on the record.
All right, well, counsel, I will take that under advisement. We'll take additional time to review those exhibits in more detail. If I need any additional argument, I'll advise counsel. If not, at some point prior to those being admitted, we'll make a ruling, likely outside of the presence of the jury on the issue. I do appreciate you bringing it to the court's attention this morning without the jurors here present. I think that's appropriate for the argument we've had on the issue. So with that, let's go ahead and get our jurors brought in and we can start with additional evidence today. Yes.
Madam Clerk, will you turn on the projector just so I can make sure it's working?
Thank you, Mr. Bailiff. Please be seated. All right, good morning. We're on the record. We're on case CR 22-211624, State of Idaho versus Lori Noreen Vallow. The prosecution's present. The defendant and defense attorneys are also present in court. The court would note all jurors are present and accounted for and properly seated as well. The court's also been advised that the jurors have each completed their juror affirmation this morning. Is that correct, Mr. Bailiff? Okay. Thank you again for your continuing adherence to that court admonition and for your continued service in the case, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. At this time, I'll allow the state to continue with the direct examination of the witness, Investigator Hart. I'll just inquire as we get started with testimony again, since we had the weekend break. Detective, if you had any, or agent, I should say, did you review at all in any way any of the trial testimony in this case since we broke on Friday afternoon?
No, Your Honor. All
right. With that in mind, then, Ms. Smith, if you'd like to continue with your direct examination, you may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Morning.
We had just finished with some text on July 15th of 2019 and ending with a chat that had occurred with Lori Vallow and from Charles Vallow's son. Do you recall?
Yes.
Okay. Let us turn to some more conversations or information you included in your summary from July 15th of 2019. So if you could look at the next slide, I think it's noted as slide 16, and take a look at this. Now, this is the same exhibit that you prepared in summary for court today?
Yes.
Okay. And just so the record's clear, the summary is a summary of what?
It's a summary of content from two iCloud accounts, Lori for Style at iCloud.com and LollyTime at iCloud.com.
That was part of the evidence submitted obtained by the investigators containing the defendant's communications with people.
Correct.
Okay. Now, if you could take a look at the next slide, and we'll go through just these two on the 15th. Can you tell us why you included these two messages?
Yes, I included these messages because they were a reference to the relationship between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow. And there was a statement from Lori Vallow about the status of that relationship.
Okay. If you could just read into the record, please, so that it's clear, what are the text communications between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow that you included from July 15th?
Line 2827 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I know you won't get this text for another hour or so, but my love for you is overflowing right now. I just want to hold you endlessly. You are my wonderful best friend that I can't live without. Line 2826 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. And yet you are so sad. Missing you. Just landed. Got to get to work.
And so why did these two particular texts amongst the thousands that you saw catch your attention and include in the summary?
It discusses Chad Daybell's statement that he can't live without Lori Vallow, and she responds, and yet you are.
Why was that relevant for investigative purposes?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for a legal conclusion.
My question was cut off, Your Honor. I said, why was that relevant for investigators' purposes?
And I'm objecting as it calls for a legal conclusion.
It's overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. You may answer.
It was clear to investigators that the relationship between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow was a driving force behind the crimes that have been alleged in this case.
Turning to some conversations on July 18th, and I believe these go on for a few bits, but could you take a look at them? Why did you include these particular communications?
This slide and 2 or 3 slides after this slide contain a text string between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow regarding the fact that Charles Vallow had changed the beneficiary of his life insurance from Lori Vallow to another individual. I included this because it was pertinent in terms of potential financial motives in this case.
If you could, starting with the lines on page 17, could you take a look at those and read those into the record?
Yes. Line 2706 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I just got the letter from the insurance company saying that I am not the beneficiary. It is a spear through my heart. Who do you think he changed it to? Brandon, or probably Kay. He left nothing for JJ. Line 2705 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Wow, that's terrible. There's no way to find out. Line 2704 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I might be able to see when I get his computer on Sunday. I could check the emails sent to the insurance company. It will show change of beneficiary. He must have done it recently.
If you could continue on to slide 18, read those as well.
Line 2703 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. It seems you would have had to agree to the change. Maybe your name was forged. You should have a good paper trail to prove it. Line 2702 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I love you. This is terrible, but it is probably another step in bringing down the Gadiantons, especially Brandon. Line 2701 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Nope, he can change it anytime he wants. He's the agent, and anyone can change their beneficiary anytime with their own signature. I'm thinking it must be Kay. Line 2700. From Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. It will be interesting if it got changed after he had 2 bullets in his chest.
And continuing on this line of summary.
Line 2699 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I don't think it could have. You can't change it after the death date. They would review that. Line 2698 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Yes, I'm thinking Kay as well. She is probably freaking out that you got those computers. I'm going to shower and give you a blessing. I'm eager to get home so we can talk. It really will be okay, my love. You are wonderful. Line 2687 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. So I talked to the insurance company. He changed it in March. So it was probably Ned before we got rid of him. They can't tell me to who, of course, but it's done. I'll still get the $4,000 a month from SS. Line 2683 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. When you get out of the temple, please text this phone. I'm home alone until about 3:30 your time. I love you so much.
Now, you indicated that you included this in your summary of the text because it discussed potential financial motive for various crimes.
Correct.
Let's go back and look at this sort of beginning of this text communication. And why did you talk about getting the letter or include getting the letter from the insurance company saying that Lori was not the beneficiary? Why did you include that text?
I included that because it was apparent that Lori Vallow was surprised to find out that the beneficiary had been changed.
And was there, turning to the next slide, was there anything significant to you about it is probably another step in bringing down the Gladiatans, especially Brandon? In your review of the iCloud, all the iCloud records in context of the entire investigation that you were part of, did you understand what that meant?
Yes.
What did that mean?
Gadiantans is another reference to the Book of Mormon. The Gadiantans were a secret society, a group of robbers, evil people. So when the phrase Gadiantan is used, it's simply identifying someone as being evil in this case, or also in this case, Brandon Boudreaux.
And why would the inclusion of Brandon Boudreaux in a conversation about Charles Vallow's life insurance money have any significance to you in the investigation?
I would object as it misstates the evidence that's actually been presented. There's no reference to Brandon Boudreaux.
I'll sustain the objection.
Why would the reference to Brandon in the text at line 2702 have any significance to you as it's inserted in a text conversation about Charles Vallow's life insurance?
That particular line in and of itself isn't terribly significant, other than we know from the investigation that that marriage was also in a tumultuous time, but it was a text in a series of text strings, one following the other. So I included it in amongst this series.
And what, if any, significance was there to the conversation about he can change it at any time? I'm thinking, and ending with, I'm thinking it must be Kay. Did you know who Kay was?
Yes.
Who was Kay?
Kay Woodcock, Charles Vallow's sister.
And turning to the line 2687, what, if any, significance in the investigation was there to a conversation about $4,000 a month from SS?
That's an indication that Lori Vallow would still receive that amount of money on a monthly basis from Social Security.
And as of July 18th, 2019, had Lori Vallow yet started to receive Social Security from JJ or for JJ from Charles's Social Security account?
Not at that date. That took place a little later on.
And yet it's referenced in line 2687.
Correct.
And that text communication about anticipated Social Security funds was on July 18, 2019 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell.
Yes.
Okay. Turning to additional conversations on July 18, 2019. Do you see those?
I do.
Okay. What, if any, significance to the investigation and or investigators' follow-up did this text communication have?
This short series of texts between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell is critically important because it is the first overt communication between them referencing the pending deaths of JJ and Tylee.
Okay. Can you read to us the text communications we're seeing on slides 20?
Yes. Line 2667. I have been instructed, from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I have been instructed to focus my efforts on Hillary, so I will. Line 2665 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Okay, find out her percentage for me and JJ's. Line 2660 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. She is at 0.13. I turned up the pain to 10 and placed a spiritual virus in her. He is at 99.99. Raphael visited him and told him to follow Amy into the light. I also assured him that James would love and take care of his mommy, which he will with all of his heart and soul. Line 2658 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. That is sweet. I miss you desperately.
In your review of the evidence and the iCloud in particular, what significance, if any, did the I have been instructed to focus my efforts on Hillary have in context of the investigation?
Hillary is the name of the entity that allegedly possessed or inhibited Tylee Ryan's body.
And so if you saw references to Hillary, based on the context of the iCloud, that was talking about the spirit in Tylee Ryan's body.
Correct.
Now, in there's a communication where Lori Vallow is asking Chad to find out her percentages for me and JJ. What did that mean in context of your review of the iCloud?
The reference to the word percentage is a reference to death percentage, meaning the timing or pending death of the individual.
And so there seems to be a response from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow about a number, that percentage and timing of impending death. Is that what we see in line 2660?
Correct. You see two different numbers.
Okay. What are those? If you could explain those to us.
Objection, Your Honor. This is going to call for him to speculate as to what these numbers are. I don't think there's any real proof, and I don't think there's been any testimony as to what these numbers are.
Sustained.
Your Honor, were you familiar and did you read almost the entire iCloud?
Yes.
Okay. Did you see any information that would lead you to understand what those percentages mean?
Yes.
What information was contained in the documents, which were the defendant's own words, right?
Yes.
What information did you learn in the iCloud that would lead you to understand what those numbers meant in context of the defendant's statements and those statements of her co-conspirators?
There are three total conversations or sets of text strings regarding the death percentage for JJ, Tylee, and Tammy Daybell. There's this one, there's another that occurs on July 30th, and then the third one occurs on August 10th. The content of these three text conversations builds upon one another, and in the subsequent text messages, there is again references to being close to.
If you'll just
One moment,
for a
please.
moment. Thank you, Mr. Bailiff. You can continue.
Thank you, Judge. I'm sorry, you got cut off. You were talking about reviewing multiple conversations about death percentages. And could you explain to us how it is you conclude what that means in context of the defendant's own words and the statements of our code of conspirators?
Well, the closer an individual was to 0 in some instances, or in this instance with JJ, 100, the closer they were to their death.
And what information did Chad Daybell provide to Lori Vallow about a number associated with Tylee?
He indicates that she is at 0.13.
And what number did Chad Daybell provide about JJ's death percentage?
99.99.
Did you see references throughout the iCloud in the defendant's own words and the statements of her co-conspirators to lead you to understand who Raphael was?
Yes, Raphael is one of the other two names that was used by Chad Daybell.
Names associated with himself?
Yes.
Okay. What was the other name again?
James.
Okay. And is that the reference to the individual later in that same section?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in response to this death percentage for Tylee and the death percentage to JJ, what was the defendant's response?
That is sweet. I miss you desperately.
Turning to text communications reflected later in the iCloud, was there additional communication between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow on July 18th after the conversation about the death percentage for JJ and Tylee?
Yes.
Could you please, are those reflected in slide 21?
Yes.
Could you read those into the record, please?
Line 2656 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. You are so adorable, beautiful, wonderful, heavenly, luscious, and angelic. So many divine attributes rolled into one dynamic, desirable package. I want you even more desperately than you want me. Line 2622 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Just grab me by the storm and I will follow you to the ends of the universe. Line 2608 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. When might that be? Line 2607 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Wednesday evening, and then repeatedly and gloriously until Friday.
And that communication continues, correct?
The next slide as well, yes.
Could you read those into the record, please?
Line 2605 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. And then what? Line 2604 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Back to crying and saying goodbye, back to the box. Line 2603 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. This trip to Utah had a lot of finality to it. I was told extreme changes are coming for me and to Utah. I welcome them both.
Now, in the text communication that's displayed to us on slides 21 and 22, why did you include this part of that communication in your summary for presentation in court?
Mainly for two reasons. One, it substantiates the affair that was being had between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow, and it references a trip that Chad Daybell was planning to take to visit Lori Vallow the next week. So this text is on July 18th, 2019. Chad Daybell's travel to visit Lori Vallow in Arizona took place July 24th through July 26th, 2019, which is a Wednesday through Friday. So if you look at line 2607, it states Wednesday evening until Friday.
Okay. Are you aware of what some of the phrase "grab me by the storm and I will follow you to the ends of the earth" meant?
Objection calls for speculation.
Overruled.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm aware.
What did that mean?
The word storm is the name they had given to Chad Daybell's penis.
And so this was an anticipation of getting together with each other for sexual purposes.
Yes.
And at this time, Chad Daybell, was he still married to Tammy?
Yes.
How far from Charles Vallow's death was that?
This is 7 days after Charles Vallow's death.
And at the end of the communication, there's some lines about, and then what, back to crying and saying goodbye. Do you see those on slide 22?
I do.
What, if any, significance in terms of your review of the entire iCloud did that part of the conversation have to the investigation?
It's a reference to their relationship and the fact that it is now one-sided due to Lori Vallow being no longer married.
And what about the trip to Utah? What, if any, significance did that have in context of the other interviews and evidence that had been reviewed?
I don't particularly think the trip to Utah has a lot of significance. It's just one of the texts that concluded this string.
Okay. And the statement, "I was told extreme changes are coming for me and Utah," was that from Chad Daybell?
That's a reference from Chad Daybell regarding changes that he's anticipating.
Now, you've included on slides 23 a series of text communications starting in the Lally Time account at line 2487 from July 20th, 2019. Do you see those?
I do.
Okay. Why did you include these text communications?
These are relevant because they demonstrate some of the religious concepts that were at play in this investigation, particularly as it relates to children being designated as being possessed or inhibited by demons. In this case, they're talking about Melanie Boudreau's children.
Blake, was that one of Melanie Boudreau's children?
That's her son.
If you could please read those into the record, these text SMS messages from Lally Time into the record.
Yes. Line 2487 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. What's Blake's percentage? Line 2486 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. He drew 3 crosses on the wall in his bedroom. We just finished painting over them. Line 2485 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell, like he was marking it for the dark side to find him. Line 2482 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Blake is at 7. SI, I took my sword of light and sliced his aura vertically in several places. You should be able to now rip and burn it. Line 2481 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I also decreased his pain tolerance to 1% and greatly increased his pain. His desire to depart is at 80%.
I understand you explained you included this to show a conversation about the darkness of children. Did this text communication have any more significance to you?
I think that it is fairly self-explanatory.
Okay. Moving to the next text communication on the next day that you pulled and included on slide 24. Can you tell us why you included this series of text or SMS messages from Lolly Time in your summary?
Yes, this is a short text string that is a follow-up in reference to the life insurance beneficiary change, where Lori Vallow is communicating to Chad Daybell that she now knows who the beneficiary of that life insurance policy is.
Can you read that into this text exchange on slide 24 into the record, please?
Yes. Line 2438 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Found it. Ned gave all of it to Rhonda 2/26/19. Line 2432 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Glad you found that out. Line 2430 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. It fits. Now she will try to take him. PHX for working on her. Work on me too. Reading all this stuff makes me sick. Line 2423 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. We will work hard on Rhonda when we are together. I will get her numbers as low as I can by Wednesday. Line 2419 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Good, let's work on it hard.
Now, you indicated it was information about the life insurance account, but in your review of multiple communications of Lori Vallow and multiple communications of Charles Vallow, was there a common association with the name Rhonda?
Yes.
What was that?
Rhonda is the name of the entity or dark spirit that supposedly inhibited Kay Woodcock.
And so reference in here about Ned, that we've heard that before, that was?
Ned, the reference to Ned is Charles Vallow.
Okay. And the reference to Rhonda was?
Kay Woodcock.
Okay. And so it's an indication that Charles Vallow gave the insurance money to Kay Woodcock.
Exactly.
And the date that Ms. Lori Vallow found out it happened.
No, the date is indicative of the date that Charles Vallow changed the beneficiary of his policy.
Now, is there anything else of significance you wanted to review as to slide 24?
No.
Okay. Turning to the next conversation, I see a reference to James and Elena again. And I recognize you talked about this a bit on Friday, but since there's been a bit of a break, who were James and Elena again?
James and Elena are alternative names, James being Chad Daybell and Elena being Lori Vallow. The James and Elena story, which is contained in its entirety in the iCloud accounts, is partly historical, accurate information chronicling the events in the lives of Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow, and it's partly fantasy.
Okay. So when you say the James and Elena story, is it just, one or two emails? Was it easy to put that story together?
Well, it wasn't difficult to put it together, but it's several segments written over time by Chad Daybell and then sent to Lori Vallow.
Okay. And so when you say several segments, there would be a text message one day, an email another, an MMS another, spread across iCloud accounts.
I believe it was limited to just texts and emails, but yes, it was spread out over time.
Okay. And understanding that you were one of the supervisory investigators on this, did you task members of the FBI to help comb through the iCloud and find the parts of the James and Elena story?
Yes, I saw all of the James and Elena story in my review of the iCloud accounts, but in order to corroborate portions of that story, I assigned an analyst to accumulate the entire story and then go through to find corroborative data or evidence to indicate the accuracy of the story.
So in order for someone to see the entirety of the James and Elena story, they either have to be able to hop around the iCloud.
Correct.
Or they have to have somebody kind of take it from here and take it from this state and sort of put it together.
Yes.
Now, and forgive me, I just want to make sure I understand. I know a long time ago in the public, stories would appear kind of in periodicals. There'd be a segment in the paper one week, right? And then a segment in the paper the next. And over time, you heard the whole
I don't
story.
object. This seems to be a narrative from the.
I'm just laying a
state's
foundation,
prosecutor, and
Judge.
I'm not done objecting here. And it doesn't seem like there's a question, Judge.
And I'll sustain that. It's an improper question at this point, Ms. Smith.
Understood, Your Honor. May I approach the bench not on that issue, but I want clarification on some procedures the court outlined
Yes.
on Friday? Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Smith, you can ask another question.
Thank you. Agent, have you seen situations where stories are pieced out in a periodical over time?
Yes,
Is that similar to how the James and Elena story evolved?
yes, over a fairly abbreviated period of time.
Okay. So there's no one text that any one person could go to that would give them the James and Elena story.
Correct.
And so in order to compile that, that would have to be like a summary of the James and Elena story.
Yes.
Now, turning to this text, could you please read the contents of slide 25 into the record?
Yes, line 2397, text from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. James and Elena had agreed to visit the temple the following morning. She returned to the hotel room, and after additional romance on the couch, they calmed their nerves enough to give each other a blessing. As James placed his hands on her head, he connected with Elena's true, eternal self. He knew he was in the presence of an exalted goddess who had returned to earth to perform a special mission. This mission included being with him, and they would progress together as translated beings. The full plan wasn't yet completely clear to him, but the immense power radiating from her confirmed his belief that she was among the greatest women in the universe.
And the communication it goes on to the next slide, correct?
Yes.
Could you please read slide 26 into the record?
Line 2395 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. They embraced following the blessings, and the emotions they felt were a mixture of eternal bliss and celestial desire. The sexual chemistry was undeniable, but the spiritual unity was a glorious bonus for both of them. They had only known each other for 3 weeks, but two lonely, misunderstood souls had finally found their best friend that they could trust and confide in. Line 2394 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. She loves it.
And it appears there's one more portion of that.
Correct.
Can you read us slide 27, please?
Line 2390 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. They arrived at the temple, and they both felt they should do sealings together. They were soon seated in a sealing room facing each other. Elena looked so stunning as she smiled at him. She seemed calm, while he felt quite nervous. Their opportunity soon came to kneel across the altar from each other, and as the sealer pronounced those sacred words, James and Elena knew that they were now sealed as husband and wife for eternity. As the earthly sealing was taking place, a similar scene involving their spirits was happening on a higher plane, where they kissed and unified their souls. They knew they had just begun a new journey together that was eternal and never-ending.
We'll go back to each portion of that, but is this the entire James and Elena story?
No.
Okay. It's just a couple sections that occurred on July 21st of 2019.
Correct.
Because your summary of the iCloud was chronological?
Yes.
Okay. So let's step back and look at slide 25. Why did you choose to include this part of the James and Elena story in your summary?
I included this slide because of the reference to the full plan not being completely clear to him.
Why would that be relevant to the investigators in the investigation?
The fact that a plan existed is relevant to the investigation and to the subsequent actions that took place over the course of time.
Anything else that, other than that there's discussion of what the plan was, and did you believe that to be a reference to a plan for what?
A plan on how they would progress together.
Was there anything else significant about this particular text?
The only other thing I would add is that this mission included being with him.
And in terms of the portion of the James and Elena story that is reflected in line 2395, why did you include this portion?
This I included for the reference that two lonely, misunderstood souls had finally found their best friend that they could trust and confide in, as a reference to their blossoming relationship.
Now, when you say a reference to their blossoming relationship, I thought they had met in November of 2018.
No, they met in October 26th through the 28th of 2018 at a conference in St. George, Utah. The second time that they met in person was in mid-November at a conference in Arizona.
Okay. And so if they had met in October and then again in November of 2018. Why do you say blossoming relationship that as reflected in a text from July of 2019?
Because the James and Elena story is the history of their relationship. So he's talking about their second meeting where they had decided to attend a temple and do a sealing ceremony.
Okay. And did you see a response from Lori Vallow in response to receiving the James and Elena story?
That she loved it.
Okay. And at this point, how long has Charles Vallow been dead?
10 days.
Was Tammy Daybell still alive?
Correct.
Moving to the next part of that James and Elena conversation, you referenced the temple, and the text appears to reference the temple. Did the investigators follow up to obtain temple records?
Yes.
And were those temple records analyzed?
Yes.
What information of relevance to the investigation was obtained in the temple records?
Those records show that Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow attended the Gilbert, Arizona temple together on November 16th of 2019.
Would that have been
2018? I'm sorry.
2018. Okay. And would that have been that second meeting you referenced?
Yes.
Okay.
Objection, this is speculative, Judge. Move to strike.
Overruled.
Is there anything else of relevance to this segment of this one text that's a part of the James and Elena story?
Yes, according to the story, that in attending the temple on that date, James and Elena knew they were now sealed together as husband and wife, showing that they believed they were married.
And the temple records that you reflected that both Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow had been at the temple in Gilbert, Arizona in November of 2018.
November 16th.
Okay. At or near the same time?
Yes.
Now, did you see, as reflected in slide 28, did you see any additional response of Lori Vallow about receiving this chronicle story of James and Elena?
Yes.
Is that what's reflected, or part of it reflected in slide 28?
Correct.
Can you please read that into the record?
Line 2388 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. It's making me so happy to read about our life that I am finally going to dance. Missing you and loving you from afar. Line 2374 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. It was great. I feel free again. I love you more than ever and can't wait to be with you forever. I'm begging father and mother. That's my job tonight. Line 2373 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I will be right beside you, begging just as much. I need you desperately.
Why did you include this part of the communication from the iCloud in your summary?
I believe it was relevant to show Lori Vallow's response to the segments of the James and Elena story.
Now, turning to communications on July 22nd of 2019, why did you include this series of communications from Lolly Time in your summary?
I included these communications because it contains a clear reference to the plans that Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow had to be together, and disclosed a location where they intended to live as part of their plan.
Could you read to us in the record the contents of the text included on slide 29, and I believe it also goes into 30.
Line 2352 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Love you. Going with Garth in an hour to see Other Side of Heaven 2. Missing you desperately, but so excited to be with you. Line 2349 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I love you. You will enjoy the scenery. Looks like Kauai a lot. Line 2346 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Hopefully we will be there someday soon together. Line 2345 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. That is the plan. Line 2344 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. And my greatest desire. Line 2334 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Hi, darling. Back from the movie. We enjoyed it. I look forward to being on a tropical island with you.
So what significance did the reference to Kauai have to you in your review of the iCloud in context of the evidence that had been accumulated?
In the totality of the case, for the entire time span of the case, it's relevant because Kauai is the island where Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow traveled to be married. And that is the island where they were found after the children were known to be missing. And ultimately, that's where Lori Vallow was arrested on some charges.
Okay. And so But they were in Kauai when?
They were married in Kauai on November 5th of 2019. And after being contacted by the Rexburg Police Department for a welfare check on JJ, they traveled the very next day to Kauai.
But this text communication referencing a future together in Kauai was in July of 2019.
Correct.
Again, Tammy Daybell was still alive.
Yes.
Was there anything else of significance on this particular slide?
No.
Moving to slide 30, what, if any, significance did this text communication have to you?
This series of texts is significant in that it is a positive affirmation that of their belief that Tylee is possessed by some sort of entity, and Lori Vallow is asking Chad Daybell to check on Tylee to see if that entity has been switched from her body.
In line 2276, was there also a reference to JJ?
Yes.
And that was in a text communication initiated by Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell, correct?
Yes.
And then line 2244 is a text communication from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell wanting Chad to check on Tylee.
Correct.
Okay. And then 2243, again, was a text from Lori Vallow initiating to see if Tylee was switched.
Yes.
Okay. And so when switched, just so that we're clear, in context of the defendant's communications, how did the defendant's communications use the word switched?
That was used to indicate one evil entity leaving the body to potentially be possessed by another.
And this is a text communication initiated by Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell.
Yes.
Anything else of significance in this text line?
Do I need to read it in the record?
Thank you. I apologize. I missed that one. Yes, please.
Line 2276 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Good morning. Missing you. Didn't sleep much. Need you to check JJ. Weird stuff happened in the middle of the night. It's like they distracted us with Blake. Line 2244 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. When you get home, check Tylee. She is being super sweet and helpful, and she cleaned her room. She got switched. Totally not her. Line 2243 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. See if she got switched. Line 2241 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Yes, she was switched. Please let me know when you can talk and I will explain it.
Now, turning to a conversation on July 26, 2019, do you see that reflected in slide 31?
Yes.
And that proceeds into slide 32, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Why did you include this series of text communications in your summary?
This is, again, an occasion where Lori Vallow is asking Chad Daybell to check on her children based on their behaviors.
Could you read slide 31 into the record, please?
Line 2120, text from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. How are things at home? Line 2119 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. She's fine. Need you to check JJ. She said he was calm and he watched movies all day, which he would never do. Line 2118 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Missing you.
Proceeding on to the text communication on slide 32. Could you read those into the record?
Line 2117 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Missing you too. It is still JJ. I'm told she is lying about him being calm and watching movies. Line 2101, text from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Mel knew. She called me. She felt the real Brighton last night and knew she was different. She was told I didn't want to tell her. She is taking well and knowing it is part of a big plan. She is amazing, although I'm still pretty upset over it. I love you. Trying to hang in there, missing your kisses.
Now, between slide 31 and 32, why did you include these particular text communications in addition to checking on JJ and Tylee? Why did you include these two slides?
I included them because of the references to JJ and then the other reference to Brighton, who is another of Melanie Boudreau's children, based on the content of that text, appears that Brighton has now been designated as being possessed by an entity.
And you say Melanie Boudreau's children, was that child's father Brandon Boudreau?
Correct.
Now, it also says there's the word big plan. In context of the defendant's communications, what did big plan refer to?
It referred to those things that would take place in the future that were being planned by Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow.
Now, did you review the iCloud for, discussion of a plan or future together?
Yes, there are several references which I have included in the summary presentation to plans and the future.
Okay. And that use of the word plan was used by Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell?
Correct.
Any idea how many times?
No.
Okay. Turning to communications, also on July 26, 2019, reflected in slide 33, why did you include these particular communications?
July 26, 2019 was the day that Chad Daybell flew home after having spent a few days with Lori Vallow in Arizona. And this is the message that he sent to, these are the messages that he sent to Lori Vallow upon his return to his home in Rexburg, Idaho.
Could you please read those into the record?
Sure. Line 2066 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I'm home, missing you immensely and feeling very tired, but I had a splendid time with you, my love. I will text again soon. Line 2059 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Tonight I figured out who I feel like. I'm a grown-up version of Harry Potter who has to live with the Dudleys in his little space under the stairs. Every few weeks I get to escape and have amazing adventures with my goddess lover, but then I have to return to my place under the stairs, feeling trapped. But I sense permanent freedom is coming.
As of July 26, 2019, Chad Daybell was still married to Tammy Daybell.
Correct.
Okay. Anything else of significance as to slide 33?
No.
Turning to communications that you included from July 27th from the Lally Time account on slides 34 and on slide 34, why did you include this text communication?
I included this because of, again, a reference to the timing of the events that took place in this case.
And when you say a reference to events that took place, what particular events took place that these would reference?
The events I'm referring to are the crimes that are alleged in this case.
And so could you read slide 34 into the record, please?
Line 2043 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. From Mel B. From Father. My sweet daughter, you have done well. I am very pleased. You have been prepared for every moment and surrounded by those who love you. You need not fear the future happenings, for they are strategically placed out for your benefit. Be at peace and be still. Enjoy the little things. Have no fear of the unknown or of people's choices. You have overcome all. Things will be fast-paced and you are ready. I love you so much. Godspeed. Now, don't mind if I speed things up a bit. Line 2042 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. That is a very nice message Mel B received. I won't mind at all if he speeds things up a bit. Line 2038 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Yes, I miss holding you in my arms, caressing and kissing you. I feel Mel's message was meant for us too. You are so wonderful.
Can you explain to us why you chose to include these texts in your summary?
There's a reference to a timing, a timeline, and speeding those things up.
And who was the reference to from Father?
That is a reference.
I'm going to object. Is this a speculative, Judge?
Sustained.
In your review of the iCloud account and the defendant's Lori Vallow's communications with Chad Daybell and others, were there references referring to one or more of the co-conspirators as dad or father?
Yes.
And in the references between Lori Vallow and her co-conspirators, who did dad or father mean?
Chad Daybell.
Is that a reference to father from Melanie Boudreau in line 2043?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, it misstates the testimony. It misstates what's actually being read here.
I'll overrule the objection at this point. There was a foundation laid for the comment, and you can delve into that on cross if you'd like, Mr. Thomas.
Very good.
Anything else that of significance on this that you want to make sure we review?
No.
Turning to the next slide, 35. I see you included a series of communications. Why did you include this section?
These texts are indicative of the relationship between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow.
Could you please read the text that you included in to the record?
Line 1935 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Are you mad, sad, what? Line 1934 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I'm doing okay, just no privacy here to hardly text, and I'm missing you immensely. I feel good about the trip. Line 1933 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I need a distraction while I'm waiting for you. I love you. Line 1932 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Absolutely. I think you'll have a fun time.
And so you indicated that text communication seemed to be indicative in context of your review of the entire iCloud of the relationship between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. How so?
At this point, we are a few weeks after Charles Vallow's death, and Lori indicates to Chad that she is waiting for him and is going to be taking a trip as a distraction while she's waiting.
And from your review of the evidence, did you see whether or not Lori took a trip?
Yes.
Where did she go?
The coast, California.
Ms. Smith, and I hate to interrupt, but before you publish the next slide, could I confirm that was the slide that had some potentially personal identifier information that needed to be redacted or have that removed? Would you confirm that before it's published, please?
Yes, Your Honor, it did. I can simply ask. It did not get redacted. However, it's pretty small. Can I redact it after, or do you want me to skip it and come back to it after a break?
Just make sure it's not published, please.
Okay.
Until it's been redacted.
Okay. Agent, if you could, on the next slide, there appears, and I'm going to do a little leading here just to avoid publishing, if I may. Okay. On the next slide, there appears to be some documents that were found in the SMS, which included documents of life insurance policy. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Okay. Can you tell us what those documents are?
Those are two photographs, MMS messages that Lori Vallow sent to Chad Daybell, and they are the screenshots of life insurance policy showing the change of beneficiary from Lori Vallow to Kay Woodcock.
And the date on the images sent would reflect that they were in the iCloud or sent in the iCloud on July 28th of 2019. I'm reading from the slide. Image sent from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell, July 28th, 2019, 9:40 p.m., line 89. Does that sound accurate?
Yes.
Okay. And then there's a second image sent a minute later on July 28th, line 88, reflecting another page and a beneficiary of Kay Woodcock.
Yes.
All right. Why did you include those images in your summary?
Chronologically, the life insurance issue had been discussed between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow on two prior occasions, and this sort of concludes that as the photos that she sent to Chad Daybell to show that beneficiary change.
Okay. And so Lori is discussing the beneficiary on her now dead husband's life insurance with Chad Daybell.
Correct.
And then sending him proof of the change of beneficiary.
Yes.
Okay. And I will skip past that and then we'll redact it and we can request permission to publish it at a later date.
All right.
Thank you. Now, turning to a text communication on July 29th, 2019. Do you see that on slide 37?
I do.
Okay. Why did you include this text communication in your summary?
I included it because of its references to causing pain to children.
Okay. Can you please read those, the text communications into the records?
Line 1877 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. One question. Do you want me to cause pain yet to those 2 3s you're writing with? Line 1876 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Probably hold off on then till we arrive. They will be a mistake to deal with, but I'll text you if they start acting up and we can zap them. Line 1875 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Miserable, not mistake. Line 1872 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Sounds great. Yes, if they are going to act up, we'll at least give them a reason to scream. I love, cherish, treasure, and adore you. The wonderful memories just keep coming back. You are mesmerizing. Raphael is one lucky guy.
Now, on July 29th, was this the time I think you had mentioned Lori Vallow was getting ready to take a trip?
Yes.
Who was she on that trip with?
Melanie Boudreau and her children.
Were Lori Vallow's children with her?
I am not sure if Tylee was present. JJ was with her.
And so when there's a reference to the 2 3s you're writing with, in context of the defendant's communications and her statements to Melanie Boudreau and her co-conspirator Chad Daybell, who did you believe those 2 3s were?
Objection is calling for speculation.
Sustained.
Did you review Lori Vallow's communications with Chad Daybell and Melanie Boudreau about this trip to California?
Yes.
And in that communication, did you have a chance to learn who was riding in cars with her?
They took one car with Melanie Boudreau's children and JJ. Again, I'm not sure if Tylee was present.
Okay. And we've seen previous text communications referencing Blake or Brighton or JJ as being possessed, correct?
We haven't seen communications yet regarding JJ being possessed, but yes, to Brighton and Blake.
Okay. And so did you have an opinion on who the 3s were that were in the car in light of the communications?
Brighton and Blake.
Why did you include this particular text string in the communications between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow?
The references to hurting children and giving them a reason to scream are relevant.
Okay. In any of these references, and I think you've mentioned a couple of times that concept, did you ever see Lori Vallow protest, like, don't do that?
No.
Turning to additional communication on July 29th, 2019, why did you include this series of communications outlined on slide 38?
This is the final communication regarding this life insurance issue with Charles Vallow.
Could you please read slide 38 into the record, please?
Yes. Line 1844 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. From Kay in response to what I sent Larry. Are you angry at me? Charles did this. I told him I didn't want to be party to it. BC, somehow I'd be made out to be the bad guy. Low. All I can say is he must have had a reason to do this regardless of what I said. INS company called me to notify that I'm beneficiary. Wanting JJ for memorial has nothing to do with money. We want him here even though he won't know what's going on because it's a memorial service for his dad. We feel when someone passes that their children attend services to meet/visit with people that loved them in life. And BC, we miss him, period. You have the only say in this matter. If for no other reason, you and I should be able to get along with each other. It doesn't need to be hostile. We miss him so much. I'll leave in the morning to get him if you'd allow it. I'm begging you, please. Line 1839 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Interesting message from Kay. She doesn't seem inclined to share the money. Hopefully Larry wants to talk to you. Line 1838 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. They are jerks. I was going to say, I hope you are going to give all the money to the kids and not keep it for yourself, but it's fruitless. I'm not responding ever.
And so you included this as sort of the end of the discussion on the life insurance of Charles Vallow.
That's right.
Okay. After this, did you ever find any evidence that Lori Vallow responded to any messaging, text, emails, MMS to Kay Vallow? Kay Woodcock.
I did not.
Okay. Did you include this for any other reason?
No.
Your Honor, I certainly can keep going. We have a substantial amount more, but I'm transitioning to a new area. Do you want to take a morning break now or just keep going?
Yeah, let's go ahead and take our morning recess.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor.
So we'll be in recess till 10:35.
All right, please.
All right, thank you. I think we'll have the jurors brought in here pretty quickly, so we can just remain standing for the jury, please.
All right, please. Here's all for the count for you.
Thank you, Mr. Bailiff. Please be seated. All right, we're back on the record on CR 22-21-1624, State of Idaho versus Lori Noreen Vallow. After the morning break, the jurors are all present and properly seated. Ms. Smith, you can continue with your direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you. Now, Agent, I'm turning to the next slide, which is slide 39, and a conversation that appears to have occurred, or at least been a part of it, on July 30th, 2019. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
Okay. Why did you include this conversation, and I suspect it goes into the next slide, on slide 40 in your summary?
This slide, and there's two subsequent slides that contain this text string, is critically important in that it clarifies death percentages and contains valuable information as it relates to JJ and Tammy Daybell and their stated death percentage.
Could you read us slide 39 and include it into the record?
Yes. Line 1781 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I got the inspiration to go back to my original death percentages that helped us track Charles, Ned, etc. Tammy is very close. Her percentage has fallen steadily since Hiplos left. It is encouraging. Line 1779 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. What is the percentage now? What about JJ's too? Line 1778 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Tammy is at 3. JJ is at 2. Both are being heavily shielded to stop intruders.
And I move to the next slide.
Line 1777 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. 2 and 3%, not 0. Line 1776 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I will explain when we talk. Line 1775 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Okay, still feeling hot for you.
And the next one.
Line 1774 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Yes, we might need to release a little steam when we talk. Anyway, this is the chart that checks what percentage mortals are still in their body. It worked for my friend's wife who died, my neighbor, George Bush, Stan Lee, etc. I kind of forgot about it because we've been dealing with zombies and demonic entities. But this afternoon, Tammy said she felt lightheaded, as if her body and spirit weren't connected. Line 1773, from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I will update the list and figure out Brandon, Adam, and others.
Do you want me to include the next series of communications or stop with these 3?
I believe this slide is the conclusion of this particular text string.
Okay. And so turning back to the information, and can you remind us again, who is Hiplos or Iplos?
Hiplos is the name of a demonic entity or dark spirit that was alleged to have been inhabiting Tammy Daybell's body.
In your review of the iCloud, what significance did the reference of Hiplos have in this text communication?
It is one of multiple names that were assigned to entities that at any given time inhibited Tammy Daybell's body.
And what about the reference to Charles or Ned?
Those are significant in that it clarifies when the word death percentage is being used, they're talking about the literal physical death of a human being.
And who is the one who initiated the inquiry about the death percentage associated with JJ?
Lori Vallow.
Okay. And the information about both are being heavily shielded to stop intruders, what did that mean in context of the communication you observed between Lori Vallow and her co-conspirator, Chad Daybell?
I'm not entirely certain the thought process on how they're being heavily shielded.
Okay. Did you learn anything about sort of the thought process on how close either Tammy or JJ were to death?
Well, it says Tammy is very close. She's at 3%, and then JJ is at 2%. So 2 and 3%, based on the content of the text, is very close to death.
And what was the defendant's response when she heard they were still at 2 or 3%?
She questioned why they weren't yet at 0.
What significance did these text communications have in terms of your review of the investigation itself?
Given the ultimate deaths of JJ, Tylee, and Tammy Daybell, it was significant in that it speaks about those deaths and that they are close to taking place.
Okay. And the person who initiates the desire for it to get to 0 is who?
Lori
Objection
Vallow.
calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Could you read for us line 1777?
From Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell, 2 and 3%, not 0.
That was initiated by the defendant to Chad Daybell?
Correct.
And in terms of lines, the slides on slide 41, line 1774 and 1773, why did you include these as part of that conversation?
Well, to have the conversation captured in its totality, but also line 1774 is another verification that they are indeed talking about real, literal deaths when he references for my friend's wife who died.
And so when you say real, literal deaths, as opposed to what?
As opposed to spiritual death or theoretical death or speaking about death in any terms other than a human being actually dying.
And then, is there anything else that you, any other reason why you included this particular slide in this summary?
Just that in the previous slide, Chad Daybell stated Tammy is very close, and he concluded with Tammy said she felt lightheaded as if her body and spirit weren't connected.
And what information was relevant about that in terms of the investigation?
Your Honor, do you object? Asked and answered.
Overruled.
Simply that when someone's body and spirit separate, they die.
So turning to slide 42, do you see those communications also from July 30th, 2019?
Yes.
Okay. Why did you include this particular set of communications in your summary?
Mainly for the last line, which references the fabulous life that Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow are going to have together.
Could you read the contents of slide 42 into the record, please?
Yes, line 1750 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I believe Lilylicious is a terrestrial word that encompasses our time together. Line 1749 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Yes, it does. Call me. Line 1748 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I love you until then. Line 1747 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Yes, until then, I love you. Line 1745 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. No worries. Garth just arrived home. I absolutely adore you. We're going to have a fabulous life together.
And so is this another example that you included of them planning for the future and planning their life together?
Yes, it is.
I see a reference to the word terrestrial, and I also remember from one of the previous slides, there was telestial. In context of your review of Lori Vallow's communications in her iCloud accounts, how were those two words used?
In context of the review, the word telestial is a reference to this world, worldly, the time, place that we live in presently, and terrestrial is a reference to a higher plane of some sort.
And so when they say lily-licious is a terrestrial word that encompasses our time together, in this context and in context of your review, what did it mean?
Objection is going to call for speculation.
I don't see enough foundation for him to answer at this point, Ms. Smith.
Were the words telestial and terrestrial used frequently within the iCloud, or on occasion within the iCloud?
Telestial was used quite a bit. Terrestrial was not used nearly as much.
Okay. How was telestial used?
In reference to this world.
Okay. And I believe you've told us terrestrial was used in what context, as used by the defendant in her own communications with her co-conspirator?
With reference to a higher plane, a more elevated place.
Okay. And so lily-licious would be reference to a higher place word encompassing their relationship.
Yes.
Now turning to text communications that are reflected on slide 43, why did you include these communications?
There were some communications in the iCloud that provided insight into Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow's behaviors that were relevant.
And relevant to the investigation and to investigative follow-up?
Relevant just in establishing a pattern of life or how they behaved.
Okay. Could you read to us the contents of slide 43 into the record, please?
Yes. Line 1117 from Lori Vallow to an unlisted individual. Panda was good, just got JJ to sleep. Gone to try to take a bath. Ty yelled at me for 30 minutes, then took off in her car. Won't answer me. Line 1116 from unlisted individual to Lori Vallow. That was expected.
In context of the investigation and the iCloud and the communications of the defendant, you said it indicated sort of a pattern of conduct. What did you mean by that?
There were voluminous communications between Charles Vallow and Lori Vallow regarding difficulties that they were having with Tylee as a teenage girl. And this is just one of those communications. Not between Charles Vallow. This takes place after his death, but it's one communication that describes that type of interaction.
Okay. And so in your summary, you tried to include examples of patterns you found throughout the iCloud.
Just a few.
Okay. Now, turning to slide 44, what are we seeing here?
These are two MMS messages. Each is a photograph. One photograph is of Chad Daybell standing next to a portrait of Jesus Christ. The other is a photograph of Alex Cox standing next to the same portrait. And then each of them sent a MMS message to Lori Vallow attached to those photographs.
Could you read to us into the record the MMS text sent to Lori Vallow from Alex Cox?
Line 75 from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow, look at the bubbies.
And this was a photograph of Chad Daybell.
Correct.
Okay. And it was Chad next to a picture of Jesus.
Yes.
Okay. And could you read into the record line 76 of the MMS text message from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow?
Line 76, photograph of Alex Cox, two exalted beings.
And why did you include these in your summary for the jury?
For two reasons. One, to show Chad Daybell and Alex Cox together on August 7th of 2019. And in terms of the religious concepts that were at play in this investigation, the reference to Alex Cox being an exalted being.
And that reference to Alex Cox being an exalted being was sent by Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow.
Correct.
Is there any other reason why you included this particular section?
No.
Okay. Turning to additional communication on August 7, 2019, slide 45, why did you include this section in your summary?
I included this mainly because of the last text in this string, which indicates that Lori Vallow and Melanie Boudreau believe their children to be demons.
Can you read into the record the text communication on page 45?
Yes, line 1399 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I love you. Taking Braxy home now. I'll check on her. Line 1394 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. She is asleep. She put a bunch of holes in the walls and doors. Definitely had demons helping her, probably 1,000. Line 1392 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Mel wants us to come up there tomorrow, but I said next Thursday to Sunday. What do you think? Line 1391 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. We are both so tired of taking care of demons. We are weary. Please ask the Lord to take them.
In context of your review of the iCloud and the evidence in this case, what significance did that have from an investigative point of view?
The significance is the designation of these children as being demons, being possessed by some dark entity. And in light of what happened with JJ and Tylee, it is relevant to the investigation in its totality.
And looking at line 1391, who is it asking that the Lord take them?
It's a reference to their children.
Okay. And who is making the request that please ask the Lord to take them?
Lori Vallow.
Now, turning to the next lines of communications as reflected on slide 46, why did you include this set of communications in the summary?
This is the first of a number of pages of a text string that chronicles a fight between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell in reference to a trip that Lori Vallow was taking to visit Chad Daybell in Rexburg, Idaho.
Was that trip able to occur?
Yes.
Okay. And so you included this to sort of document the conversation surrounding that trip?
Yes, and the issues that arose with that trip.
Okay. Now let's read those into the record, and then we'll talk about those issues.
Line 1369, text from Lori Vallow to Melanie Boudreau. We just had a big fight, probably no go on next week. Line 1368 from Melanie Boudreau to Lori Vallow. Are you okay? Line 1367 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. My heart is crushed, but I will never stop loving you. Line 1364 from Melanie Boudreau to Lori Vallow. I love you. If you need to talk at all, just call me. I don't sleep anyways. Hang in there, babe. It was a hard day. Don't let the dumb things here get to you. You know who you are. Praying for our hearts to be made full and for the Lord to execute all things expeditiously.
Before we read the remainder of that sort of text exchange or surrounding that trip, why did you include these particular texts in your summary?
They affirm the relationship between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow. This is the first instance of a fight between the two that I was able to observe in the iCloud. And the subsequent texts indicate the fullness of that particular conversation as it relates to this fight.
And what about the phrase, for the Lord to execute all things expeditiously? What did that phrase, how was that phrase important to this text communication in context to the iCloud as you saw it?
I'll object. This is speculative. It's calling for him to speculate.
I'll overrule that.
Melanie Boudreau and Lori Vallow were very close. Melanie was aware from prior text communications of the Lord's plan for them, and that is a reference to executing that plan.
Now, continuing with that conversation, can you, or that situation as reflected in the iCloud, could you read into the record the text from page 47?
Line 1348 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Missing you. Heading to the girl's funeral. Emma was her teacher and is one of the speakers. This is very difficult, but I will abide by your request to not talk. I hate causing you pain because I love you more than ever. Line 1345 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. You're the best. I hope your day goes well. I adore you. Line 1303 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Absolutely excruciating to be cut off from you. I love you.
If you could you read to us the next few lines on continue down to slide 48?
Yes, line 1302 From Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow, good night. Saddest day of my life. Line 1300 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Grandpa Keith is here. I am supposed to warn you that you are unprotected. The angels are angry that you are ignoring me. I told him to go back, but he says he isn't allowed to. I'm honestly not trying to manipulate you to respond. I understand that you need your space, but they say you have cut me off and the protection I built around your house is gone. I love you and don't want you getting attacked. They said that if you at least give me a thumbs up emoji, it will restore our connection enough to give some protection. Line 1299 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I love you. Line 1298 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Thank you, my love. I will get things restored.
So why did you include these particular communications that are reflected in slide 47 and 48 in the summary of your review?
I included them to demonstrate first the argument that had taken place regarding Lori Vallow coming to Rexburg to visit Chad Daybell, and secondly, to demonstrate how Chad Daybell used religious concepts to manipulate others.
And throughout those text communications from around 11:30 in the morning on August 8th through around 10:02 on August 8th, I see multiple communications from Chad to Lori. Were there many communications from Lori back to him?
No, as is shown, she was ignoring him up until the text at 9:53 p.m.
And so is line 13 his response to being ignored?
Line 1300?
Line 1300, yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. And what significance did Grandpa Keith have to you, if any, in context of that communication?
It's my understanding that Grandpa Keith is deceased, so it's Chad Daybell claiming that a deceased relative was visiting him to...
I'm going to object, move to strike. He's speculating.
Sustained.
Okay. So the phrase Grandpa Keith is here. Is that that communication was from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow?
Yes.
Okay. And then the rest of that, Chad indicates he's supposed to warn her that she's not protected.
Correct.
And in order to provide the protection, she's got to give him a thumbs up or some sort of sign.
Yes.
And does Lori Vallow do that?
Yes.
Is there anything else of significance in that particular set of text communications?
No.
Okay. Moving to some communication on August 9th, 2019. Do you see those reflected in slide 49?
I do.
Okay. Can you, what significance did this line of communication have in terms of your summary?
So there's this slide, and this text string continues into the subsequent slide. This is significant in that it is an occasion where we see Chad Daybell designating someone as a dark spirit and Lori Vallow disagreeing with Chad Daybell's designation and making her own designation as to that individual's status.
And does it show any pushback or disagreement from Chad on her own designation?
He subsequently agrees to her designation.
Okay. Could you please read into the record slide 49 and 50?
Line 1232 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Can you check Nathan Pacheco, see what level he is? Is he light? Line 1231 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Also Mike Stroud. Mel G thinks he went dark, but I think he's light. Line 1229 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I will check those two. Line 1226 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Any guesses on Pacheco? Line 1225 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Just tell me. Line 1224 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. 4.1 dark.
And slide 50?
Line 1222 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Nope, I get 5.1 light. Part of our team. Line 1221 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. We'll go with your answer. Line 1220 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Why? What's wrong with your picker? Line 1219 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. What about Mike Stroud? Seriously. Line 1218 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. He's done a great infiltration job.
And so you indicated that this reflected an exchange on rating people. Why did you include this particular exchange?
Traditionally, Chad Daybell was the one who would designate people as he would give these light or dark scores. This is an occasion where Lori Vallow disagrees with his score and designates her own score.
Okay. And again, it appears that Chad Daybell specifically said, we'll go with your answer.
Correct.
Turning to the next set of communications from August 10th, can you tell us why you included the communications that are reflected on slide 50?
Yes. So this is a fairly lengthy text string that encompasses this slide and the next 5 slides. I included these communications because they are critically important in providing clarity as it relates to what ultimately happened to Tylee and JJ.
Let's start with, could you read into the record slide 51?
Line 1177, please check JJ. Line 1177 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Please check JJ. He just woke up saying crazy stuff and won't go back to sleep. He is talking to Blake. It's weird. Line 1175 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. JJ is still JJ. I am told his spirit recognizes Blake is evil and is unsettled by him. Line 1172 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Hi, my love. How is JJ now? Line 1171 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. He's better. He was just up talking nonsense for like 2 hours last night. I'm sure they were bugging him. Is he at 0 yet? I miss you.
Do you want to read the next one and circle back, or do you want to take a minute to talk about why you included this set?
Why don't we read the entire
Okay.
text string in its totality and then circle back?
Okay. So turning to slide 52, could you please read slide 52 into the record?
Line 1170 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Yes, he's at 0. He probably was partly through the veil, talking to people both light and dark. Line 1169 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Maybe he was talking to the real Blake. Line 1167 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Yes, that was the real Blake.
And continuing on the conversation in line 53, at slide 53.
Line 1165 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Do you think there is a perfectly orchestrated plan to take the children? And we just have to wait for it to be carried out. Line 1164 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I feel lost, like I should be doing something to help. Line 1161 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. There is a plan being orchestrated for the children. I was shown last night how it fit together, but it has been taken from my mind, of course.
Slide 54.
Line 1159 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. What should I be doing? Line 1158 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. You are doing everything right, my love. The Lord told me she is right on track. He said to just keep resolving the telestial issues so you are unencumbered and fully free. Line 1155 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. That actually feels good that JJ was talking to the real Blake, getting close. When I was sitting across from him eating bacon, I sensed he was barely attached to his body.
And slide 55.
Line 1125 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. You are so incredible. In many ways, your mission has barely begun. Line 1124 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. As long as it ends with you, it's all good. Line 1123 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Yes, cheek to cheek, loin to loin. It isn't very far away, my love. Line 1120 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I wish I could see with you and be cheek to cheek.
And so let's go back.
There's one more slide in the text.
The next one. Okay.
Line 1118 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow.
There's been no question asked.
Moving on to read slide 56. Could you read that in the record?
I'd like a
please?
ruling on my objection.
Well, the objection was there's no question, and so counsel just asked a new question, so it's resolved.
Line 1118 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I seriously cannot stop crying. I was allowed to feel my own emotions I will experience as you sing to them, and the love, admiration, and reverence I have for you are indescribable. Everything we do together is going to be spectacular. Line 1117 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I can't wait, literally can't wait. I have no patience. I want you now. Line 1113 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I'm certainly your biggest fan. I love you, Lily. Hold on, my sweet angel. We are so close to the finish line. Line 1112 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I'm trying. Line 1111 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. We'll make it.
And then there are some heart emojis at the end of that one and dancing people emojis.
Yes.
And so taking a step back at these text communications on August 10th, 2019, starting with slide 51. Who is it who initiates the conversation in text form about J.J. Vallow?
Lori Vallow.
And what significance did this set of communications have in terms of your review and summary of the iClouds?
You're going to object. I think these things, these texts speak for themselves.
I'll sustain that objection.
Thank you.
Agent, in preparing summary exhibits, how do you pick the particular slides or communications you include?
Based on their relevance in comparison with the entirety of the investigation and all of the information that has been developed during the course of that investigation.
I'm going to object to his characterization of relevance. I think that's a legal conclusion.
Overruled.
Thank you. And so in picking these sets of text communication from the iCloud, what relevance did these have to the investigation itself?
They were inquiries by Lori Vallow regarding JJ's death percentage and Chad Daybell's response to those inquiries.
Okay. And so in the defendant and her co-conspirators' words, what was JJ's death percentage?
He was at 0.
Objection asked and answered.
Overruled.
And in terms of, now that, the text message reflected that JJ was at 0, what did the text text from Lori Vallow reflect her response was upon her hearing her son was at 0?
Again, Judge asked and answered.
That's been asked and answered.
Okay. Who initiated the inquiry about a perfectly orchestrated plan to take the children?
Lori Vallow.
Okay. Who initiated the question on whether they have to wait for it to be carried out?
Lori Vallow.
Who initiated the conversation about what actions they could take to further the plan?
Again, Judge, I'm going to object. Texts speak for themselves.
Overruled.
Lori Vallow.
Who initiated communications about further actions they could do to further plans on telestial issues?
Lori Vallow.
Okay. And remind us again, what is telestial issues?
Objection asked and answered.
Sustained.
Okay. And so telestial means earthly issues?
Objection asked and answered.
Yes, leading and sustained.
Okay. And so in view and context of the entire iCloud that you reviewed, the defendant's own words and her statements to the co-conspirators, what did the defendant's words or the co-conspirators' words about unencumbered and fully free mean?
It is a reference to whatever issues are present in Lori Vallow's life that are.
I'm going to object. He's speculating.
I'll sustain that.
Okay. Did you see conversation from the defendant in her own words with Chad Daybell or Alex Cox or others about having burdens in their life or barriers or obstacles?
Objection vague.
Overruled.
Yes.
Okay. And so in understanding that the defendant herself and her co-conspirators talked about having burdens and barriers or obstacles, in context of their own words, what did the phrase unencumbered and fully free mean?
To be free from those barriers or obstacles.
And looking at the text communications on slide 55, is this a reference to their future together?
Correct.
Okay. Now, if you could take a look at slide 57. Can you tell us why you included the contents of slide 57 in your summary?
To illustrate the relationship between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow.
Can you, and this text communication happened right at the end or around the time of the text communications about JJ being at 0?
Yes.
Okay. Can you read into the record slide 57, please?
Line 61 photograph sent from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell with the caption, "Surprises are waiting."
And then there's an image on that screen as well.
Correct.
Now, let's turn to the text communication reflected on slide 58. Why did you include these communications in your summary?
I included these communications because it demonstrates an understanding on behalf of Lori Vallow of a reality of whether Chad Daybell is physically present with her or not physically present with her.
Could you read into the record the text communications on slide 58?
Line 965 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Very good description of what just happened. Wish you were really here to experience this with me. Line 954 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Thank you for being mine. Wish I could wake up and kiss your sweet, tender lips for real. You are my everything.
Okay. And so when you see the phrase "for real" or "really here," what significance did that have in terms of their overall communications and exchanges?
There were a lot of communications between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow in reference to portaling to different spheres of existence or different places so that they could be together spiritually. These two texts indicate an understanding of reality versus fantasy.
Turning to the text communications reflected in slide 59. Why did you include these text communications?
These text communications reference a family trip that Chad Daybell was taking with his wife and children and relatives, and that Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell were both upset by the fact that he had to spend time with his family.
Can you read these into the record, please?
Yes. Line 860 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I will join you. Partly why I am so sad is my Boise trip has turned into a trip with extended family. Not happy about it. Line 859 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. How much more of this can you take? Line 858 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. They want to go to Craters of the Moon National Park. I can't take much more. So trapped. Line 857 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Are we supposed to wait forever?
And if you could read slide 60.
Line 856 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. No, but the next 2 days will be torture. Thankfully, I will be alone most of Wednesday and beyond. Line 854 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Is that what he wants? For me to sit around waiting for you endlessly and you miserably wasting time? Just doesn't feel right. Line 853 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I agree, it feels so drawn out. Line 850 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. It's 3 broken heart emojis.
And let's proceed with slide 61. Those.
Line 844 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I'm just so frustrated. I'm sorry, honey. Line 843 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. You can't just keep tearing my heart out. I really can't take it anymore. I'm sorry. Line 842 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. It is tearing both of our hearts out. Please look beyond the next 2 days. Line 841 from Lori Vallow.
I apologize.
To Chad Daybell. What about the past 2 days? I didn't even get to talk to you on your birthday. I'm clearly not a priority. I just don't want to be so sad all the time and do heartbroken.
And 62.
Line 840 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. If you really loved me, you wouldn't want that either. Line 839 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I could have talked, but the girls were there. I truly love you with all my heart. Line 836 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. You should give all of your love. You should give all of you love and your attention to your wife and family. I'm just a distraction. Go have fun with your family. I really do want you to. I just can't be in the way anymore. If things change, then we can talk. But we have nothing until things change anyway.
Do you want to pause here or finish the text exchange?
I believe there's just 1 or 2 more slides.
Could you read slide 63, please?
Line 833 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Oh, honey, that is so crushing. I feel so destroyed inside. You know my love for you is deep and real. I want change. I'm constantly begging for change. I want you. Nothing else matters. But I am hindering your life and you deserve better. I love you so intensely. Line 832 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. but I will leave you alone, as excruciating as that will be, until I hear from you. Line 831 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. You can't say to me nothing else matters, because everything is before me. If that's what the Lord wants, then I just need to do something X so I can pull myself out of this deep despair. It's not like me to be this way. It's been way too much for way too long. Line 830 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. The pain is unbearable.
One more. And if you could read slide 64.
Line 829 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. You are right. Put me aside until things change. Yes, the pain is unbearable. Line 828 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Are you going to threaten me that I'm unprotected for doing so? Line 827 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Absolutely not. I'm so upset at the circumstances that I am demanding they protect you more than ever. Line 831 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. You can't say to me nothing else matters, because everything, I'm sorry, that's a repeat.
Okay.
That's an error. I apologize.
No, that's all right. And then,
I think there's one final slide.
okay. The slide, if you could read slide 65.
Line 825 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I'm so alone without you. It is devastating. Line 824 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I feel so alone too. We are surrounded by celestial relatives that are simply obstacles. I'm so sick of it. Line 823 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Me too. What is it that you really want? Line 824 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I want to be with you. That is my greatest hope and dream. I would happily join you tomorrow if it felt like heaven would not strike us down.
That was a fairly lengthy set of text communications. Why did you include this conversation in the summary?
I included it to demonstrate the dynamic of the relationship between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow and the designation of their family, their relatives, as celestial obstacles.
And celestial obstacles to what?
To them being together.
And then you said the dynamic of that relationship. Can you help us understand what you meant by that?
Charles Vallow was
Yeah,
no,
on an objective foundation.
Sustained.
In your previous answer, you used the words that I did it to demonstrate the dynamic of their relationship. In your review of the hundreds of thousands of data points of this account, did you see exchanges between Lori Vallow and her co-conspirators?
yes,
And in those communications and pictures and images, did an appearance of a relationship or dynamics of her relationship with Chad Daybell become apparent?
yes.
So when you said you included this text exchange conversation as an example of the dynamic of their relationship, can you explain to us what you meant by that?
What I meant by that is that their relationship is the driving force behind the crimes that are alleged in this case.
And that the celestial relatives, the earthly relatives, are the obstacles.
Correct.
Now, let's turn to additional communication on September 3rd. Remind us again, what date was it that Tylee Ryan was last seen alive?
The last sighting of Tylee Ryan alive took place on September 8th, 2019.
Turning to communication from September 3rd of 2019, could you read slide 66 into the record, please?
Line 269 from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow. Wi-Fi is in. What you doing? Line 267 from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox. Working on Z's. What did you decide on username and password? Line 264 from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow. Network name is anti-layman. PW is too many kids.
And that's a number 2, not the
Number
word.
2.
Yeah.
Line 263 from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox. Funny.
Let's finish and review that next slide. Could you read slide 67 into the record, please?
Line 262 from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow. And I can change it to whatever you want if you want to change it. I am proud of you. No more Z's. Line 261 from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox. We are trying to get to the bottom of what we need to do to eliminate them completely. I'm sure you will be told also. Line 260 from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow. Excellent.
if you don't mind pausing right here and looking at this conversation, could you explain to us why you included this part of the conversation between Alex Cox and Lori Vallow in your summary?
Yes, Alex Cox and Lori Vallow both moved to Rexburg, Idaho around September 1st and 2nd of 2019. I included this text mainly for line 264, which is the password Alex Cox designated for their network of too many kids.
And that's a text Alex Cox to Lori Vallow, correct?
Yes.
Did Alex Cox have any children living with him in Rexburg, Idaho?
No.
Of the two siblings, who had the children living in Rexburg, Idaho?
Lori Vallow.
I also see network name is Anti-Lehman. In context of your review of all these records, did that the records you reviewed and the investigation and your knowledge of this investigation yield to you understand what Anti-Lehman was a reference to?
Yes.
What is that?
Lehman is another individual referenced in the Book of Mormon. He is a brother of Nephi, so it's simply just a word chosen for their password.
Okay. And
network name, excuse me.
That's okay. And is Lehman known as a good guy or a bad guy?
A bad guy.
I also see the letter Z, and I understand that's been used throughout the iCloud. What is that a reference to?
Zombies.
And I also see line 261. There's a conversation where Lori is talking to Alex. What, if any, significance did line 261 have to you?
The significance of that is the partnership with Chad Daybell that Lori Vallow had in this alleged work in which they were engaged in eliminating zombies.
Okay. And yet it's a text communication to Alex Cox. So why would that be relevant if it wasn't with Chad?
There are a number of communications between Alex Cox and Lori Vallow that relate to the religious concepts that are discussed throughout the iCloud.
Okay. And the text, it says we are trying to get to the bottom of what we need to do to eliminate them completely. I'm sure you will be told also. And it was Alex who responded to Lori saying, excellent.
Yes.
Moving on to additional conversation on September 3rd, 2019. Can you read for us the contents of slide 68?
Line 259 from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow. I am going to get lunch and probably go to the range to sight in my rifles. Line 258 from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox. Fun. You need the practice. Line 257 from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow. I do. Line 253 from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox. Bad news on our brother. Line 252 from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow. What's that? Line 251 from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox. Z. Line 250 from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow. Really? When was that?
And may I ask you to read slide 69, please?
Line 232 from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox. Forced out, I think. Line 231 from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox. With his anxiety, he wasn't strong enough to fight back. Line 230 from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow. Line 229 from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox. JJ is stronger, fights then off every day. Line 228 from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox. Zach was a 3L. JJ is a 4,3L.
And slide 70.
Line 227 from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow. That's when he yells, no. Line 222 from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow. Okay. Line 221 from Alex Cox to Lori Vallow. My lips are sealed. Line 220 from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox. Good boy, learning more. I'll fill you in this afternoon.
Why did you include these last several slides in your summary of your observations of the iCloud?
I included them to demonstrate that Alex Cox was a participant and in this group in discussing these religious concepts, including designating people as zombies, and that he understood those things in these communications.
And who is it who conveys this information to Alex Cox in this text exchange?
His sister, Lori Vallow.
Okay. Is that an indicative pattern you found in the iCloud that Lori Vallow would convey information to her brother Alex Cox.
Yes.
Did you see any additional evidence that Lori would sort of supply Alex affirmation like we see on line 220, good boy?
Yes,
Was that a pattern you saw in the iCloud?
it was. We saw those kinds of I saw those kinds of communications on a number of occasions.
And in any of those communications between Lori and Alex, did you ever see Lori suggesting to Alex that people weren't zombies?
Can you rephrase that?
Sure. In the text communications between Alex Cox and Lori Vallow, did you ever see communications where the concept of certain dark entities or zombies came up, where Lori was sort of pulling Alex back or telling him, no, they're not zombies?
No.
Now let's turn to slide 71. What are we seeing here?
This is from the videos section of Lori for Style. There was a number of very short videos that existed. This is just one of those that documents a trip that Lori Vallow, Alex Cox, Tylee Ryan, and JJ Vallow took to Yellowstone National Park on September 8th of 2019. And this is the last known video of Tylee Ryan alive.
Why did you include this? Because it was the last one, Tylee, where Tylee was alive?
Yes,
And the image on the screen is her, JJ, and Alex Cox.
correct.
Your Honor, I can certainly, at what point does the court want to take a lunch break?
Just anytime between now and noon is fine.
This might be a good place to stop, Judge.
Okay, we can do that.
Okay.
All right, we'll take our lunch recess. Let's go ahead and have the jurors excused for lunch, then I'll address counsel briefly after they're excused.
All right, please.
Thank you. Please be seated.
Your Honor, you indicated you wanted a counsel present. Do you want the witness in here or out of here?
It's fine with the witness in here. Just
Okay.
have the jurors excused. Counsel, I'm going to make a ruling on the proposed upcoming exhibits that have been proffered by the state. I'm going to do that at the end of the lunch break before the jurors are brought back in. So if we could reconvene at about 12:45, I think I'll be ready to make a ruling on the bench from that point. And we'll do that without the jurors present.
Okay, thank you, Judge.
Thank you. We'll be in lunch recess.
All right.
Thank you. Please be seated. Okay, we're on the record on KCR 22-21-1624, State of Idaho versus Noreen Vallow. Counsel is here present. The jurors are not present. The defendant is also here present in the courtroom. The court wanted to take up an issue on an evidentiary ruling before the jurors came back in after the lunch break. At issue are 3 proposed exhibits that have been offered. They haven't yet technically been offered, but in essentially a motion in limine here that's been argued, they've been given courtesy copies to the court and counsel for a preliminary ruling as to the admissibility or inadmissibility of the exhibits. Where they're not identified by proposed numbers at this point, I'll just refer to the 3 exhibits as follows. I'll be referring to the first one as we'll call the Nick Edwards PowerPoint. The second one is the James and Elena story PowerPoint. And the third proposed exhibit I'll call the Vallow timeline. If counsel needs any clarification as to which proposed exhibits I'm referencing, let me know. Otherwise, I'll use those titles. So going forward, the court has reviewed some of the case law and the rules that would govern these exhibits.
And Your Honor, I apologize for interrupting. There was one thing I was going to see if I could just clarify briefly for the record with regard to the Nick Edwards PowerPoint.
Yes.
There had been an indication that there were no police reports. I went back to verify. There were approximately 26 police reports drafted or created by Mr. or Investigator Edwards in this matter. So I did just want to clarify that for the record.
Okay. Thank you for the additional information on that, Ms. Blake. So the court first looks at a couple of different rules, which I previously cited this morning. Rule 1006 allows summaries to prove content, and that indicates summaries may be used to prove the content of voluminous writings, recordings, or photographs that cannot be conveniently examined in court. And then I also had previously referenced the rule that relates to a witness's ability to refresh their recollection, which I think is Rule 612 of the Idaho Rules of Evidence. Some of the case law we've reviewed is not a state case, but an Idaho federal case, which is called United States versus Babichenko, which is Babichenko. That's 543 F sub 3rd 946, a 2021 Idaho case. Some of the case law in that case does go through an analysis of use of summary exhibits, and a few of the citations or quotes out of there is that summary exhibits must be reasonably accurate and correct in their characterizations of the underlying materials. And also, summary exhibits are distinct from pedagogical devices, which are helpful testimonial aids, but typically not admitted into evidence. And then also in that case, they talked about, quote, while a single item may appear innocuous in a vacuum, the government has repeatedly stressed the breadth of the alleged scheme and is entitled to present a comprehensive picture in its case in chief. That quotes a case, United States versus Daybell, 974 F 2nd 1215. It says, moreover, these are exactly the kind of transactions that are best presented to the jury as Rule 1006 summaries, as it would be a waste of time to present the discrete actions and materials piece by piece. And that's, again, citing that Babichenko case. So there's precedent out there to allow a sort of summarizing witness, which the state is purporting to use here, to use a summary to detail or present what that case calls a comprehensive picture of its case in chief. The first exhibit then that's been proposed is what I'll refer to as the Nick Edwards PowerPoint. The defense has raised some argument to say it shouldn't be admitted. One is a timeliness argument, that it contains argument or it's argumentative, and that it's cumulative have been some of the points raised. The court would note that there's some additional case law that talks about, says the trial court should carefully examine summary charts, and here it would be this PowerPoint, to determine that everything contained in them is supported by the proof. And that's out of a case called Abbas, ABBAS, 730 Fed 2nd 1300. So one of the issues here is that, back to the timeliness argument, is there time to carefully examine the entire summary and make sure everything in it is supported by the proof? Going through this Nick Edwards PowerPoint, there's some different issues I'll raise here that relate to that. Again, citing another case law, there's an admonition to guard against situation in which figures, computation, and charts acquire, quote, an existence of their own, independent of the evidence which gave rise to them. Holland versus United States 348 US 121. In the Edwards PowerPoint, there's multiple issues I've seen with that PowerPoint. First of all, it just appears to be simply a closing argument PowerPoint. There's editorialization within the PowerPoint. For example, there's a slide, which is slide number 49, and that slide 49 has a quotation in there, and it quotes, after it was suggested by Coroner Dye that, and then it goes on to state a quotation, and then it references a different officer's police report for that information, and that's a different officer that's already been in court and already testified. And so it cites directly from a report, which we would allow the testifying officer to do, and this is another officer that would come in and summarize or quote from an officer's report. And under Rule 612, even the officer on the stand wouldn't be allowed to do that. They would have to look at a report if they needed to refresh their recollection, but they would not be allowed to just quote from or read out of their report, which would be what is being sought in that particular slide. Slide 55 references witness interviews that are not in evidence. It quotes from interviews from Melanie Gibb, who's a witness who already came in and testified in trial, and it quotes directly statements she made, not in trial, statements she made in a pretrial interview. There are simply too many issues with the way that whole PowerPoint is put together, I find the entire thing essentially argumentative. It's not an officer testifying about facts they're aware of. It's basically prepackaged testimony in a presentation that the officer would go through step by step of pre-summarized and pre-written testimony, which doesn't comply with Rule 403. I think that would be unfairly prejudicial to the defense to allow a witness to not just prepare testimony, but go in and put their testimony together in a multimedia presentation. Prosecutors get to do that. You get to tie all your evidence together in a closing argument. But that particular exhibit is got enough issues. I don't think it can be reasonably corrected in order to be submitted for the jury to consider in this case. I think it goes directly against this admonition to guard against it becoming something different and have an existence of its own independent of evidence, which gave rise to the creation of it. It even cites things that haven't even been submitted into evidence here. So looking through that, I'm not going to permit the Nick Edwards PowerPoint. Of course, the witness can testify and can testify to any material facts that he knows about that pertain to what's in the PowerPoint. But the PowerPoint itself is going to be disallowed based on what the court's reviewed in that. The next one we'll look at then, I'll call the James and Elena story PowerPoint, which consists of the verbatim, I guess, entire James and Elena story that's been referenced here in court already by the witness today, and also has slides attached to the end of the story. Again, the defense has raised objections on that PowerPoint, and the court has to consider, first of all, under Rule 403, whether or not that rule states that evidence may be excluded if its probative value is substantially outweighed by a danger of one or more of the following: unfair prejudice, confusing the issues, misleading the jury, undue delay, wasting time, or needlessly presenting cumulative evidence. So that particular exhibit I'll divide into two subparts. Part A would be all of the slides that are just the story itself. Part B are the accompanying following slides, of which there are 5 or 6 after the story. The witness this morning describing the story said it was a mix of fantasy and reality, that it has some relevance because it does tend to show actual events that coincided or matched some of the citations within the story. So the court has to consider whether there's enough relevance there. In looking at the story itself, and there's also been a cumulative argument. First, there's a witness on the stand who's already cited to and read through parts of the story. And have another witness come in and reread parts that have already been read into the record would be cumulative unnecessarily and needlessly under the rule. I think more importantly, reading into the record the entire story would go against Rule 403 because, number one, I do consider the wasting time part of 403. It's like a 35 slides worth of just a long story that is expressly indicated here as just part fantasy. To read the entire story into the record, if that's what the state intended, or publish it likewise to the jury, would create a waste of time, needlessly cumulative evidence, and also maybe too confusing for the jury at that point if it's acknowledged that some of the story is fantasy. I think the jury is allowed to separate whether or not what was fantasy, what was reality. The witness can be allowed, whoever's going to proffer the exhibit, assuming it's admitted, then the witness can document or cite to particular sections in the story that do track actual events. If that's the state's theory, I would find that permissible. But reading the entire story into the record, I wouldn't find to be a wise use of the court's time and the juror's time as well. So I'll allow, if there's adequate foundation for the story in its entirety, to be submitted to the jurors as an exhibit, but I won't allow for the entire story to be read into the record. The witness can make reference to certain sections, point those out to the jurors, and if the jurors wish to delve further into the story in their deliberations, they would be provided a copy, and so they'd be allowed to reference that if they thought it was something relevant that they needed to consider in the deliberations. So that's the first part of that PowerPoint as to the story. The next part is the slides that come along with the end of the story, and the remaining slides I would not allow for several reasons. Again, going into these exhibits, I need to summarize evidence that's already in the case. Slide 35, for example, has multiple titles. It has 2 different photographs. One was admitted into evidence. One's never been admitted into evidence. It makes argumentative type comments. So that slide I wouldn't allow. Slide 36 has another photograph that's never been admitted into evidence in the case. And slide 37 as well, and contains argumentative language such as substantiation, which is that's the provenance of the jury to decide whether or not something is substantiated or not. So again, it's not just a summary of evidence, it's argumentative in nature. And then there's a separate chart also included within the summary, and the information in that chart would likely be admissible, but there's also some highlighting within that, and the case law indicates that it's also not fair within these charts if they're summarizing evidence to emphasize certain parts of the evidence and not other parts. That's, again, goes into arguments. So on the James and Elena story PowerPoint, the court will not allow the PowerPoint to be an exhibit. However, the story itself can be admitted, assuming there's adequate foundation to do that. And if there are other objections when it's offered, I'll take those up at the time. And the jurors may have a copy, hard copy for an exhibit, but not the PowerPoint. That'll be the ruling then on that. The final exhibit then is the timeline. And on the timeline, the court has reviewed that, and it appears it comports with evidence that's been previously admitted and would be an appropriate summary under Rule 1006 from what I've seen at this point. The only required modifications to that would be certain slides are highlighted in colors with like red or green, I think maybe yellow, and they stand out. And again, I think it's improper to emphasize certain parts of the evidence. I think that's for argument and for the jurors. And there are a few references in there, such as the word presumably. There was a text presumably to Chad. That again goes to argument. So if any of those editorial type references would be removed, and the emphasizing colors that are in there, there's I think maybe 5 or 6, there's not that many, but other than that, I don't see a reason why the timeline would not meet the requirements under Rule 1006 and 403 to be admissible, provided there's adequate foundation. So with those modifications, the court will consider allowing its submission. So that's the ruling I have as to the 3 exhibits. The defense made the objection. Mr. Archibald, do you have any questions on the court's ruling? All right, thank you. Any questions from the state?
Just want to clarify a few things to make sure that I have it clear. On the James and Elena exhibit, the court would allow the PowerPoint of just the story to be submitted as a written exhibit. Is that correct?
Yeah, so instead of PowerPoint, just print it off.
And then take off the last slides, the part B that the court referenced.
Yes.
And then with regard to the Nick Edwards exhibit, that was a PowerPoint. The court has indicated that would not be allowed. You referenced specific slides. If the state wanted to use individual slides as separate exhibits, would that potentially be allowed depending on the ruling of the court? Some of the slides wouldn't contain what had been concerning to the court would be the state's position.
Okay, and I didn't mean to, the list I gave was not an inclusive list. It was just a few I pointed out. I saw issues with most of it, if not all of it. There may be specific slides or there are information within those slides that I think is admissible. It's just the form and how it was presented, I think does come across as argument. And so I'm not ruling out the content within many of those slides to be permissible. It's just the way it didn't really create a summary. It was essentially tying together argument, just like the prosecution would in a closing argument. So if there are other slides you want to use separately and you think they wouldn't fall within those same concerns, I could take those up on an ad hoc basis if they're proffered by the state.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. There were just a few that I don't think contained much written content, just more charts and graphs, things of that nature that the state may request or attempt to admit. Just wanted to make sure that the whole thing was not prohibited as to individual slides necessarily.
Okay, and I would agree with your interpretation of my ruling there.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome. Okay, that'll conclude the issue on those proposed items of evidence. Then with that in mind, let's have the jurors brought in. We can continue with evidence.
Jury's not present accounted for, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Bailiff. Please be seated. All right, we're back on the record on KCR 22-21-1624 after the lunch break. Appreciate the patience of the jurors. We were taking up some matters outside of your presence before we got started again with additional testimony. Ms. Smith continues with direct examination of. That's fine. It's fine. Okay. State's got that sorted out now, so we'll continue with your direct examination of the agent. I'll remind the witness you're still under testimony for your oath. I'm sorry, you're still under oath for your testimony today. And with that in mind, Ms. Smith, if you'd like to continue with your direct, you may.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Let's turn to some chat or information that you included in your summary between Lori Vallow and Sydney Woodbury. Can you take a look at slide 72? And I believe this part of the chat goes through slide 73.
Correct.
Okay. Why did you include this particular chat session in the summary you prepared?
I included this because of two reasons. First, it shows efforts that were made to hire a caregiver for JJ by Lori Vallow in mid-September. And then in terms of the timing of the last known video that exists of JJ Vallow, that video coincides with the latter half of this particular chat.
Now, I noticed at the top of exhibit 70, slide 72, it says there are 26 total messages. Did you put all 26 in the slides?
No.
Okay, why not?
Due to the need to convey what's being talked about without overburdening this process with every single message.
Okay. And so just so we're clear, the idea of a summary is to take the highlights, put it in, but the original is still available.
Correct.
Okay. So could you do us a favor and read slide 72 and 73 into the record, please?
Yes, this is chat number 6 from Sydney Woodbury to Lori Vallow on September 18th, 2019. Hi, Lori, this is Sydney Woodbury from care.com. I just received your message and think your little boy sounds so sweet. I actually have worked with kids in the past with autism at a behavior science company and used positive behavior therapy to help them. I love playing with kids and doing fun things. What are the hours you are thinking of, as well as hourly rate? I am currently attending school, so I hope I can help out with the hours you're needing. Response from Lori Vallow to Sydney Woodbury. That's so great. I'm thinking $15 an hour. I'm flexible with time. He gets out of school at 2:30 every day, so a few hours a week after school. We could work around your schedule as far as days of the week and then some time on Saturdays. Again from Lori Vallow. We live on Pioneer Road, only a few minutes from campus. Do you want to come meet us?
And if you could complete the chat front that's reflected on slide 73.
Yes. From Sydney Woodbury to Lori Vallow. Yes, I'd love to. Again from Sydney Woodbury. Am I good to come over? From Lori Vallow to Sydney Woodbury. Sure, we are here. From Lori Vallow to Sydney Woodbury. Picking up JJ now. Excited to see you today. From Sydney Woodbury to Lori Vallow. Okay, I'm heading over now.
And so there was I understand you said the significance of this was an effort to hire somebody to assist with JJ. Did I hear that right?
Yes.
Okay. What was the last known sighting again, just for a reference, of Tylee Ryan alive?
September 8th, 2019.
Based on your review of the communications from Lori Vallow with others and that information in context, prior to September 8th of 2019, was Tylee a resource in helping care for JJ?
Yes.
Okay. What sort of communications did you have that support that conclusion that Tylee helped care for her brother?
There were lots of texts related throughout the review of the iCloud related to Tylee helping to take care of JJ when Lori Vallow had errands to run or needed to be absent from the home for some reason or another.
And prior to Tylee, Tylee's disappearance, had Lori had any other support or infrastructure in caring for JJ?
Yes, while they lived in Phoenix, there was a woman named Angela who worked for a company that Lori Vallow had a contract with to have a certain number of hours each week of care provided for JJ.
Okay. Were there, prior to Charles Vallow's death, did he have any role in helping care for JJ?
Of course, he cared for JJ frequently as well.
Okay. And so after September 8th and the move to Rexburg, what infrastructure of support could you find for Lori Vallow to help her care for JJ?
This was the only reference I found.
Okay. And so based on your review of the iCloud record and videos and chats and all the records you told us you looked at, was JJ an easy child to care for and raise?
Not at all. He had severe autism, and so he was a challenging young child.
So by September 18th, who was the primary, almost sole caregiver for JJ Vallow?
Lori Vallow.
Is there any other reason why you included this chat session with Sydney Woodbury in the iCloud summary you prepared?
Just in context with the back half of this chat.
Okay. And when you say back half of this chat, are we talking slide 73?
No.
Okay.
Slide 75 and 6.
Okay. Well, let's go to slide 74. What are we looking at here?
This is from the video section of Lori for Style at iCloud.com, and this is just a very brief video, but it is the last known video of JJ Vallow while he was alive, and it was taken on September 22nd of 2019.
Prior to September 22nd of 2019, were there other videos of JJ Vallow?
Lots of them.
Okay. After September 22nd of 2019, in any of Lori's electronic data, did you find any videos or pictures of JJ Vallow?
No.
And so when you say the back half of this communication, are we talking about what's reflected on slide 75?
Yes.
Okay. Can you read slide 75 into the record, please?
Yes. Continuation of chat number 6 from Sydney Woodbury to Lori Vallow on September 24th, 2019. Hi, Lolo. Are we still good for me coming today? From Lori Vallow to Sydney Woodbury. Hi, Sydney. I hope the wedding was good. So JJ's grandparents came this weekend and they took him for a few weeks to give me a break. So he won't be back until probably the end of October. I wish I had other work for you to do. You are such a darling girl. I understand if you need to get another job. From Lori Vallow to Sydney Woodbury. Of course, I'm not sure when he'll be back, but I'm going to do some traveling while he's gone, probably to see my friends in Hawaii, but I'll let you know for sure when we are both back in Rexburg. You are great.
Now, did this text communication proceed after that date?
There were some additional messages, yes.
But not on September 24th?
Correct.
Okay. Now, the weekend of September 21st, 22nd, and the morning of the 23rd, had Lori had visitors?
Yes.
Who were those visitors?
Melanie Gibb and David Warwick.
Okay. And did you find any evidence whatsoever that JJ's grandparents had been in Rexburg September 21st, 22nd, or 23rd?
No.
Let's turn to slide 76. Why did you include this SMS section from Lori for Style in your summary?
This is a significant text string between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell that talks very specifically about Tammy Daybell's pending death.
Okay. Could you read for us? Could you read for slide 76 and 77 into the record?
Yes.
Thank you.
Line 810 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Good night, Angel Lily. So excited to go on our date. Line 782 from Lori Vallow to Alex Cox. We are supposed to go on a real date tonight, but we are discussing it. Perhaps an evening at home would be better so we are not out and about. I'll let you know. But you could come and sing with us after your shower. Line 773 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Hello, sweet angel. Big news about Tammy. Please let me know if you are awake and can talk. I love you.
And what's on 77?
Line 772 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. The short version is that she has been switched. Tammy is in limbo, and a level 3 demonic entity named Viola is in her body. It happened about 10 p.m. and was done by Tammy's sister Sam, who I always knew was 3D, but it turns out she is multiple creation. Line 771 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Viola has been attached for about a year to my niece Danica, who is Sam's 12-year-old daughter. I have connected with Tammy in limbo, and she is very frustrated and upset. She wants Viola removed as soon as possible. Viola seems to be similar to Penelope. The personality differences from Tammy should be evident quickly. Please seek a confirmation on this, but I have now checked 3 times since I got home and get more affirmative answers each time.
And if we may, could we proceed to read line 78 as well?
Yes. Line 770 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Sam is much like Brandon. She has been my biggest enemy over the years. She refuses to read my books and threw the biggest fit when we moved to Idaho. She has only visited us when the kids got married and always fled Idaho within hours, like she was being burned. She's definitely comparable to Brandon and Summer. Line 769 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Not fully sure of the timing for removal, but once her actions verify the differences, I don't want to wait.
If I may ask a couple of questions about that text communication. Are you aware of the date that Brandon Boudreaux was shot at?
I am.
What date was Brandon Boudreaux shot at?
October 2nd of 2019.
Are you aware of the date that Tammy Daybell was shot at by someone in her driveway?
I am.
What date was she shot at?
October 9th of 2019.
Now, and so at this point of this text communication in the late evening hours of October 3rd to the early morning hours or the daytime hours of October 5th, was Tammy Daybell still alive?
Yes.
Okay. So can you help us understand what a real date means in context of the timeline and the text exchange you've read to us?
Yes. Lori Vallow and her children moved to Rexburg the first part of September of 2019. Based on the investigation, both children were killed in September of 2019. Now, in the early part of October, there's a reference to going on a real date out in public. Rexburg is a small town, and so that is problematic for Chad Daybell still being married to Tammy Daybell.
Okay. And so by this date, Lori Vallow is unencumbered and fully free.
Correct.
But Chad Daybell is not.
Correct.
And so was there any information that would suggest that Lori wanted to go on a real date?
That's what she stated to Alex Cox on October 4th.
Okay. And so was there any significance to you in context of the iCloud and the review where he talks about big news to Tammy, about Tammy? Please let me know if you're awake and can talk.
Yes, within 12 hours of the text regarding going on a real date, Chad Daybell now has big news about Tammy, and that news was that she's in limbo because her body's been inhibited by a level 3 demonic entity named Viola.
Turning to some of the texts that are on slide 77, just so I'm clear, the text from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow is asking her to seek confirmation?
Correct.
Okay. And so Chad is seeking Lori's opinion?
Correct.
And turning to the text on slide 78, who is it who is discussing timing for removal?
That's a text from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow.
Okay. And was there any indication that at this point Lori Vallow protested, said anything in any way in opposition to a timing for removal and not wanting to wait?
No.
Before we move to the next text, is there anything else in that text communication between the two about the entity inside of Tammy and not wanting to wait that you wish to review?
No.
Okay. turning to a text communication with Lori Vallow and Melanie Boudreau reflected on slide 79 and 80. Why did you include these two slides?
I included these slides because they contain travel information for Lori Vallow and show that she was traveling out of state during the first attempt on Tammy's life, which took place on October 9th of 2019.
Okay. So the previous texts which had about not wanting to wait were on or about October 5th, correct?
October 4th and October 5th.
Okay. And then the first attempt on Tammy's life with the shooter in the driveway was October 9th.
Correct.
October 7th, is that some of the text communications we see in slide 79 and slide 80?
Yes.
Could you please read those into the record?
Line 729 from Lori Vallow to Melanie Boudreau. I'm really feeling like we need to go to Missouri and work. Maybe we can fly there on Thursday and back on Sat. Line 728 from Lori Vallow to Melanie Boudreau. American has a nonstop flight PHX to Kansas City Thursday at 1 p.m., then fly back on Sat at 6:30 p.m. Audrey said we could stay with her, but I told her we could get a hotel and she could stay with us. She will take us to all the amazing sites.
And slide 80, please.
Line 726 from Melanie Boudreau to Lori Vallow. What about Brandon not being able to take the kids to it? Does Dad think I will need to be here? Line 725 from Melanie Boudreau to Lori Vallow to Utah. Line 724 from Lori Vallow to Melanie Boudreau. Nope, you need to be unavailable. That is the schedule. Line 723 from Melanie Boudreau to Lori Vallow. Okay, Captain.
Can you help us understand the significance of this text messaging in context of your summary?
It simply illustrates that Lori Vallow made travel arrangements and was not present in Idaho during the first attempt on Tammy Daybell's life.
There's a reference on slide 80, line 723, from Melanie Boudreau to Lori Vallow. Okay, Captain. Do you see that?
I do.
Did you see any other evidence of Lori Vallow giving direction or instruction to Melanie Boudreau on what to do or how to do or when to do things?
Yes, I saw that on a number of occasions.
Okay. Did you see that same sort of what to do, how to do it, sort of, okay, Captain instructions given to other people within their group of friends?
The only other one would be to Alex Cox.
Now, turning to line 81, slide 81, I apologize. Can you tell us why you included this text exchange between Audrey Baratario and Lori Vallow?
Yes, this is a text string between Audrey Baratario and Lori Vallow, wherein Audrey Baratario makes an inquiry about Lori Vallow and C, Chad Daybell, working regarding Tammy Daybell.
Okay. Could you please read slide 81 in?
Line 669 from Audrey Baratario to Lori Vallow. How did yesterday go? Line 668 from Audrey Baratario to Lori Vallow, with you and C working. Line 667 from Lori Vallow to Audrey Baratario. Well, we did a lot of work today. We got her out, but a new one got in, so we are still working on it. Audrey, any ideas you have would be greatly appreciated. Line 666 from Audrey Baratario to Lori Vallow. Okay.
Now, I realize we haven't had you reading the different emojis that the jury can see, but do you see the emoji that's at the end of Audrey Baratario to Lori Vallow?
I do.
In your experience, what does the face with the two eyes X'd out?
Judge, any characterization of this, Judge?
That's without foundation sustained.
Have you had experience in looking up and reviewing various suspects' communications back and forth?
Yes.
Okay. Does that include review of what emojis are included in their text communications?
Sometimes.
Okay. Do you have any experience in looking up the emoji with the face and the eyes X'd out?
Yes.
In your research and your review of this iCloud account, what did the face with the eyes X'd out signify?
Again, I'm going to object to mischaracterization. It's too speculative.
Overruled.
It can be associated with death.
Okay. Why did you include this text communication in your summary exhibit supplied?
Because of the inquiry regarding Tammy Daybell, particularly in light of the date of these communications, which is subsequent to the first attempt on Tammy Daybell's life.
Okay. And what day did what day was Tammy Daybell killed?
October 19th of 2019.
So this text communication between Audrey and Lori was between the attempted shooting and the day she was killed.
Correct.
Is there anything else of significance you would like to review on slide 81?
No.
Turning to slide 82, why did you include this series of communications between Lori Vallow and Melanie Boudreau?
I included this for context purposes because it is a similar conversation relating to Brandon Boudreau with references for could he go, similar to what we've seen in other communications.
Could you please read into the record slides 82 and 83?
Yes. Line 663 from Lori Vallow to Melanie Boudreau. Yeah, but until that agreement is signed by the judge, it is all subject to change. That's probably the reason for the delay. Line 662 from Melanie Boudreau to Lori Vallow. Is there a possibility he could go before I move? Line 661 from Lori Vallow to Melanie Boudreau. There's always that possibility. We will work on it. Just have faith and do whatever the Lord tells you. He is always right. Line 655 from Melanie Boudreau to Lori Vallow. I don't recall the words to get him out, but should we try?
And then turning to slide 83.
Line 654 from Lori Vallow to Melanie Boudreau. I know them. I'll work on it now. Put all your energy in. Line 647 from Melanie Boudreau to Lori Vallow. I've worked on them all day and evening. Line 646 from Lori Vallow to Melanie Boudreau. Me too. He's got to be ready to go. Line 645 from Melanie Boudreau to Lori Vallow. I know.
Is there anything else you want to review with the jury on why you included the text communication between Melanie Boudreau and Lori Vallow from October 14, 2019?
No.
Turning to text communication from October 19th, 2019, why did you include these SMS messages from Lori Verstyle?
These are messages to Lori Vallow informing her of Tammy Daybell's death while Lori Vallow was traveling in Hawaii.
Okay. And so at this point, Lori Vallow was in Hawaii. Do you know who she was in Hawaii with?
She was there with Melanie Boudreau initially, and then Audrey Baratario flew over and joined them some days after Lori Vallow and Melanie Boudreau had arrived.
Okay. If you could please read into the record slide 84.
Line 541 from unknown individual to Lori Vallow. I'm not sure if you heard, but Chad's wife died last night. Line 540 from Lori Vallow to unknown individual. Oh my gosh, I did not hear that. I'm in Hawaii and it's 6 a.m. Line 539 from Lori Vallow to unknown individual. Do you know what happened? Line 538 from unknown individual to Lori Vallow. Yes, she awoke in the night coughing, threw up, collapsed, and passed away.
Why did you include this series of text communications specifically from the morning of October 19th?
Due to its relevance in the death of Tammy Daybell.
Okay. Did you have reason to believe that Lori had learned other ways in another manner of Tammy Daybell's death?
There's nothing in the iCloud to indicate that.
Okay. Let's turn to text communication from October 19th with Chad Daybell. Can you please read slides 85 into the record?
Yes. Line 532 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Not fun without you. Can you call me? Line 531 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. How are you doing is the question. Line 530 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I'm hanging in there. My parents are staying here and we are still getting visitors, but I will call you soon.
Why did you include these texts?
Subsequent to Tammy Daybell's death on October 19th, 2019, there's a flurry of text messages between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell that are insightful as to the nature of the relationship between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow and their subsequent plans now that Tammy Daybell is dead.
Turning to slide 86, could you read that one into the record?
Yes. Line 528 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Percentage in body. Whole sore 24, Bucola 11, Grisson 14. Line 527 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Great job on lowering them. I loved talking with you. It is baby night, so come get me later. Line 526 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Missing you so much. I can feel you in bed with me though. Can't wait to truly hold you tightly every day and night. Line 525 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I'm missing you more. I need you desperately. I can't wait.
So this text communication happens around just after midnight on the 20th through around 7 in the morning on October 20th, 2019, correct?
Yes,
Less than 24 hours after Tammy Daybell dies.
roughly 24 hours, yes.
Any other significance to this particular slide?
No.
Okay. Moving towards the next series of communication from on the 20th, why did you include slide 87?
These are a continuation, this slide and probably the next two are a continuation of that text string between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow.
Okay. Could you please read in slide 87 and then we'll move to 88 and 89.
Line 524 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Need you to hold me tight. That would be great. What about the idea of you coming here Thursday or Friday? Or do you want me to come home? Line 523 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Their apartment is haunted and we can't clear the place. So they are looking to move anyway. And I have the perfect place for them. I need to be here to get sorting the financial stuff. And I truly need your help. So please come home Thursday so we can spend the night together. Then, as soon as I have things under control, we can return. I seriously want you to look for a condo for us while you are there that we could return to at the first of the month.
And please read slide 88.
Line 518 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I want to get going full steam on the Lily workout plan. Tighten the abs, get a full body tan, grow my hair out. This could be really good for both of us. Line 517 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I love that plan. It's not soon enough though. This is torture. Maybe you need to clear my mind so I can't remember how much I love you. Line 516 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I will try, but it feels like Raphael and Lily are together at about 100%. Not sure it will ever be lower again.
And if you could read slide 89.
Line 515 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. That's true. I do feel you. I feel lovesick. I can't sleep. I don't want to eat. I just want you. It's so consuming. Line 514 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I know exactly how you feel. I'm feeling sad, but it isn't for the reason everyone thinks.
And the I'm feeling sad, but it isn't for the reason everyone thinks was 8 in the morning on October 20th, 2019.
Correct.
Okay. In terms of those three slides in that text communication, is there anything else of significance you wish to cover?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Turning to slide 90. Why did you include this text communication between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell?
This short text string between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell is extremely important in that Lori Vallow expresses a concern to Chad Daybell regarding Alex Cox.
Can you please read into the record slide 90?
Line 482 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I had a bad dream about Al. Make sure he is still him and protect him. Line 481 from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. He would be the one they use to get to us both. All this alone time is not good for him. Line 479 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I will try to reach out to him later today. Line 471 from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I just cleared all of Al's weapons, curses, and cords and filled him with malachite healing balm. I also put angels around him.
And if you could read slide 91.
This is a slide from the notes section of Lori for Style, line 161. Alex Cox, multiple creation, fourth creation exalted 9 times, sibling to me 2 times on fourth creation. Rose is exalted, married 3 times on fourth creation, and became eternal companions after fourth creation. His mission is to help Lori.
So the exchange between Lori and Chad about Alex, why did you include that specifically?
I included it because of the reference to Al and him being the one they would use to get to both Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow.
And the date of that exchange was October 23rd, 2019?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know the date that Alex Cox passed away?
Oh, boy. December, I want to say December 12th, but I'm sorry, I can't recall that exact date.
That's okay. Early December, beginning of December.
December 2nd would be the next date that comes to my mind, but again, I can't recall clearly. I know it's December of 2019.
Fair enough. And so in October, there's a text communication about Al being the one that would get to them, correct?
That Al would be the one they use to get to us both.
Do you have any information about when did Alex Cox subsequently marry someone from this group?
Yes.
Who did he marry after this date?
Zulema Pastentes.
And then sometime towards the beginning or the first couple weeks of December, Alex Cox is dead.
Correct.
And then why did you include the notes section of Lori for Style on Alex Cox?
This contains some of the religious concepts that were pertinent to this investigation, but mainly for the last line that his mission is to help Lori.
Okay. Now, when you say it relates to the religious concepts and specifically about Alex Cox's job to help Lori, what was that based on in terms of your review of the iCloud?
During the review of the iCloud, there's voluminous information regarding the religious beliefs of Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow. And this is one note that contains references to some of those things.
Okay. And did you see through your review of the various iCloud accounts and emails and information in the iCloud accounts for Lori Vallow, any sort of definition of Alex Cox's role in this religious group of friends?
One of the main references was that his mission in life was to protect and to help his sister Lori.
Okay. And within the communications of the iCloud that you reviewed, the communications between Lori and Chad and Alex and others, did you find any evidence that Alex believed that his mission was to help and protect Lori?
Yes.
Now, turning to slide 92. I see that it appears to be a text between Lori Vallow and Melanie Boudreau.
Correct.
Okay. Could you please read slide 92 into the record?
Line 175 from Lori Vallow to Melanie Boudreau. Will you do this job if your whole family turns against you? That is what the Lord has asked of us. Our glories will be worth it, and they will all shrink in our presence. It will be a sad day for those who choose to oppose us when we work for the Lord and are his valiant warriors. Be strong, my little one. We will be gone in a few.
Why did you include this particular text message to Melanie Boudreau in the iCloud summary?
I included this because it is illustrative of Lori Vallow's beliefs and the statement that she made to Melanie Boudreau, who was part of this group.
And what particular statement?
The entirety of the text, I believe, is her statement.
Okay. Is there anything else of significance for that particular text?
No.
Okay. Now, in your review of the iCloud, did you also see videos in the iCloud?
Hundreds of them.
Okay. And I think you've told us you saw videos and emails and documents, hundreds, and if not thousands of documents.
Yes.
Okay. Did you find any documentation of a patriarchal blessing given to Alex Cox by Chad Daybell?
Yes, that was found in the iCloud.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd ask that the witness be given State's Exhibit 50A, a courtesy copy of which has already been given the court.
All right. And is that, I think that's previously admitted?
That patriarchal blessing was the recording that was done, I believe, but 50 itself, 50A is the written copy from the iCloud. It should be admitted as part of 29, but we pulled that specific document out and gave it its own number, 50A.
All right. Would there be any objection to the admission of 50A that's being offered?
Yes, Your Honor, it's cumulative.
Response?
Your Honor, it is not cumulative. A recording was played for the jury. The written copy found in the iCloud has not been provided.
All right. I've considered Rule 403. Do not find it's needlessly cumulative, so it can be admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. May the witness be shown it?
Yes.
Thank you. Just so that he can look at it. Thank you, sir. Okay. 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 Did you get a chance to look at it?
Yes.
That's a copy of the patriarchal blessing you found in the iCloud?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, did you review this document?
I have, yes.
Are you aware of what a patriarchal blessing is?
I am, yes.
What is a patriarchal blessing?
In the LDS faith, it's a blessing that faithful members receive at one point in their life to provide a spiritual guide for them.
And this has already been read into the record, so I'm not going to ask the witness to do that again. But who is allowed to give a patriarchal blessing within the LDS faith?
I would object, Your Honor. I don't think he has the proper foundation to be able to say that.
If you know, do you know who's allowed to give a patriarchal blessing within the LDS Church?
I do.
Who is allowed?
Again, Judge, I don't think he has a proper foundation to discuss.
He needs to explain how that foundation is if he's going to testify to that fact.
How do you know who's allowed to give a patriarchal blessing within the LDS Church?
I am familiar with this process and who is called within the church to give these blessings.
Okay. And have you also researched and looked into some of those processes and procedures?
Yes.
Okay. So again, who's allowed to give a patriarchal blessing?
Again, Judge, I'm going to object. I don't think he has the credentials to talk about this.
Well, he just laid a foundation that's adequate for the court to consider, so I'll overrule the objection at this point.
Thank you.
Within each geographic stake in the LDS faith, there is one individual who is called to be a patriarch. That one individual is the person who administers these blessings.
Okay. And did you find any evidence in your review of the iCloud and any of the evidence or any of the interviews or the temple records from the LDS Church that Chad Daybell was authorized by the LDS Church to give a patriarchal blessing?
No.
Okay. Now, that patriarchal blessing in States Exhibit 58A is a written patriarchal blessing from who?
It states from Patriarch Chad Daybell.
Okay. To whom?
Alexander Lamar Cox.
Okay. What, if any, significance did States Exhibits 50A have to you in context of your review of the iCloud and the evidence as a whole?
There were a couple of phrases that were used during this blessing as it relates to Alex Cox's mission to protect Lori Vallow, and a few other lines that indicated things that Alex Cox had done that I believed were pertinent to this investigation.
What lines are those?
In the third paragraph of the patriarchal blessing, about halfway down, it states, "Great warriors were needed in that creation. Powerful goddesses needed to be protected, and you were selected to help protect your sister. You helped her in numerous probations as a defender. You have a special bond with her even from the premortal world. You connected there, and as she grew in power, you were right there beside her, always with a humble heart."
Why was that significant to you?
Alex Cox was part of this group. He was close to Chad Daybell and close to Lori Vallow. And Lori Vallow had made statements to Chad Daybell in text messages that Alex Cox would be the one they would use to get to both Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell.
Objection, Your Honor. I think that misstates what was actually written in the text.
I'll overrule that objection.
And so in context of the investigation, why did those things matter?
In the totality of the investigation, Alex Cox had a role in the events that took place.
And was there additional information in the next paragraph, paragraph 4?
Yes.
What information stood out to you?
In the last sentence, it states, "You have already assisted us in ways that can never be repaid, but you will continue to do so as you move forward in this life."
Okay. Why did that particular statement stick out to you in context of your review of the iCloud and all of the evidence?
It is a direct reference by Chad Daybell regarding Alexander Cox, stating that he has assisted them in ways that can, quote, never be repaid.
And in that document, there appear to be any evidence of forgiveness or dispensation of grace.
Yes,
Can you tell us about that?
that's in the 6th paragraph. There's a sentence which states, "Throughout adulthood, you have refined yourself, and I want you to know that the Savior is saying to you at this time, well done, thy soul is cleansed, and all is well."
Is there anything else about the patriarchal blessing that stuck out to you? in terms of the investigation and its connection to the iCloud,
Just one more sentence in the next paragraph.
which is?
It states, "You will be a powerful servant. I bless you with that knowledge that you will now move forward as a true warrior, not only through physical action, but through spiritual power that will be bestowed upon you."
And why did that stand out to you?
The reference to physical action.
Now, you've mentioned several texts about the relationship between Chad and Lori. Did that result in multiple efforts to follow up on that relationship and its connections to the crimes against Tylee, JJ, and Tammy?
Yes.
You mentioned several texts and communications and emails reflecting a need for money or a monetary value. Did that communication about money as a need for money and life insurance money have any significance for investigative follow-up?
It did.
And did officers take those steps?
Yes.
You also mentioned that the electronic data and the evidence that you possessed and researched reflected a relationship and perhaps an agreement between Alex, Chad, and Lori. Why was that significant to you in terms of the investigation and items and directives you gave? That was a long question. If you need me to rephrase, I can.
Do that one again.
You indicated, based on your review of the electronic information in the iCloud and instructions you gave to others, that the evidence of a relationship or an agreement between Alex and Chad and Lori was significant.
Correct.
Why?
Well, from the beginning, it was clear that the romantic relationship between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow was the driving force behind the crimes that are alleged to have taken place. And Alex Cox had a role in assisting for those things to happen.
You also discussed that there were several messages or planning for the future. Any idea how many?
Several.
Okay. Why is the presence in the defendant's own words of planning for the future or wanting to be together, why is that significant in terms of the investigative efforts you directed?
Because it's evidence that's directly generated by Lori Vallow.
Okay. Now, you've talked about various items. Were there other items in the iCloud reflecting anything that had been deleted? Was there evidence of items deleted but not gone in either Lolly Time or Lori for Style?
Yes, there are deleted texts, meaning deleted off of the device, off of the phone, but they're present in the iCloud.
Okay. Did some of those chats or items in the deleted section include chats or attempted chats with Kay Woodcock?
I'm sorry.
Did some of the deleted information include deleted chats with Kay Woodcock?
I'm not sure if they were deleted or not. There were messages from Kay Woodcock to Lori Vallow regarding wanting to FaceTime JJ or to have JJ attend Charles Vallow's funeral service, but I don't know if those were deleted.
Okay. Did you see any evidence that Lori had responded to any of those?
No.
Okay. Now, prior to September 8th of 2019, did you see instances of Tylee, Ryan, a teenager, texting or communicating with her mother?
Yes.
Okay. After September 8th of 2019, did you see any evidence of texting or communication between Chad and Lori?
Between Chad and Lori?
I'm sorry, Tylee and Lori.
No.
Okay. Let's talk about other things to see whether they were there or they were missing. Prior to September 18th, did Lori Vallow's iCloud accounts reflect pictures of the children?
Yes.
Did they reflect emails of or about the children?
Some.
Okay. Did they reflect messages of the children?
There were a lot of messages about the day-to-day activities, primarily JJ, to a lesser amount Tylee, but yes, those were present.
And prior to September of 2019, were there videos of the children? children.
Yes.
After September 8th of 2019, did you see evidence of the Tylee, either through pictures, emails, messages, or videos?
Nothing after September 8th.
What about, as to JJ, what about after September 22nd, or the morning of the 23rd? Did you see any evidence of JJ in the pictures, the emails, the messages, the videos?
No.
Was that a stark contrast to what was before September?
Yes, very stark.
Now, in your review of the iCloud, that winter and spring of 2019, did you see any messaging about Lori attempting to just divorce Charles?
No, there were a total of 2 text messages regarding a divorce between Lori Vallow and Charles Vallow. The first was in February of 2019 and was a message from Lori Vallow's bishop indicating Charles Vallow was going to serve her with divorce papers. And the second message was from Charles Vallow to Lori Vallow on June 29th, 2019, indicating he intended to divorce Lori Vallow. Both of those messages were from other people to Lori Vallow regarding a possible divorce.
Did you see any evidence in any of Lori's information or the search history or the text messages or the messaging that Lori searched for a divorce attorney?
No.
I want to object to this is 404B.
Give me just a minute to think about that objection, counsel. Which part? We've already had some testimony come in, Mr. Thomas, and without going too much into a speaking objection, what in particular about that question you think relates to 404B?
Anything about the divorce? It has nothing to do with anything that we're dealing with today. And under 403, I would also object.
Response.
Your Honor, the state's evidence has shown that there was, throughout the different charged conspiracies, there was a motive, a consistent motive running throughout them that Lori Vallow needed her spouse gone, but not divorced.
Okay, and Ms. Smith, just in generalities for the.
Right. It reflects motive, intent, absence of mistake to commit the crimes that she's charged with.
All right, counsel, could I have a quick sidebar? All right, counsel, I considered the ruling, had a brief sidebar there. I've considered the ruling under both Rules of Evidence 403 and 404B. I'll overrule the objection on 404B, finding that wouldn't apply in this particular instance. In 403, I've considered that rule as well and will overrule the objection on relevance grounds. So the witness can answer that question. If we could perhaps have it read back into the record, Madam Reporter.
Did you see any evidence in any of Lori's information or the search history or the text messages or the messaging that Lori searched for divorce?
No, I did not.
Your Honor, I have probably 10 or 15 more minutes. Do we want to take our break now?
I think so.
Okay.
Why don't we do that? We'll go ahead and take the mid-afternoon break and resume here 20 till or quarter till.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, please.
Thank you. Please be seated. Could I have the jurors brought back, please?
right, please. Here's our president for you.
Thank you. Please be seated. Okay, we're back on the record after the afternoon break. KCR 22-21-1624, State of Idaho versus Lori Noreen Vallow. The jurors are all present and properly seated. Ms. Smith, if you'd like to continue with your direct examination, you may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Agent, a couple quick questions. In the multiple email messages, data review, iCloud accounts that you looked at about, with the messages referencing JJ, Tylee, and Tammy being dark and having death percentages at 0, did you ever see an objection from Lori Vallow?
No.
Did you ever see anything other than Lori Vallow aiding and encouraging that conversation?
No.
Now, turning towards what you outlined a bit last week, it's my understanding that law enforcement and the FBI brought a tremendous amount of resources to bear on this investigation.
Yes.
From November of 2019 to June of 2020, did the FBI and law enforcement ever stop looking for JJ and Tylee?
No.
Why not?
That is the posture that you have to take in a missing child case, that you always hope for the best outcome and work as tirelessly as possible until the case is resolved.
Okay. And in this situation, looking at all of the messaging and communication that Lori Vallow had, did you ever see any evidence that JJ Vallow was alive after September of 2019?
No.
Did you ever see any evidence that Lori was looking for him or trying to support him or help him after September 22nd, 2019?
No.
As for Tylee, did you ever see after September 8th of 2019 in any of her email accounts, any of the information, her text message, that Lori Vallow was looking for her?
No.
Did you ever find any evidence that Lori Vallow had that Tylee was alive after September 8th of 2019?
No.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
All right, thank you, Ms. Smith. Mr. Thomas, will you be doing cross?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Thomas, you can inquire.
Thank you. Just a little while ago, we were talking about patriarchal blessings, and you indicated that you didn't find any evidence that Chad was able to give a patriarchal blessing. Is that a true statement?
Yes.
Okay. What evidence were you looking for?
That he would hold that calling in the LDS faith.
Okay. And so did you contact church headquarters about that?
I did not.
Did you contact his bishop about that?
I know we had
Did you?
contact.
No, that's just a yes or no question.
Okay, no.
Okay. Did you contact, so you didn't talk to his bishop, you didn't talk to church headquarters. Did you talk to any of the 70 or anybody in authority with regards to him being a patriarch?
Me personally, no, I did not.
Okay. So when the state asked you if you found any evidence that Chad was able to give a patriarchal blessing, and you said no, you really didn't do any research on that, right?
No, that's not correct.
Okay. Explain that.
We knew from the
Who's
contact.
we?
I knew.
Objection, Your Honor. May the witness be allowed to answer his question?
Oh,
You cut him
that's-
off.
It's overruled because he started with we, and I think that's worth clarifying. So, Mr. Thomas, you can continue.
Who is we?
I'll clarify. I knew from the investigation that Chad Daybell was called as a ward clerk. His calling in the LDS faith was not that of a patriarch.
Okay. Who did you speak to about that?
I didn't speak to anybody about it. It was contained in conversations and interviews and other investigative efforts that took place.
So you didn't talk to anybody with regards to him being a patriarch. You just made that assumption.
Objection, compound question.
Overruled.
Based on the totality of the investigation, to my knowledge, Chad Daybell is not a patriarch.
Okay. I'm going to ask that that be stricken. That's non-responsive to the question.
Well, that's overruled. It was the response he gave.
The state asked you if there were any videos of on Lori Vallow's Lori for Style and Lolly Time at iCloud.com. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you indicated that there were hundreds of videos.
Yes.
The only videos that were played today were was one short video, correct?
2 short videos.
2 short videos. One JJ and one Tylee.
Correct.
All right. There were lots of videos of Lori singing with her children, correct?
Yes.
Lots of videos of her playing on the beach with her children, correct?
Yes.
Lots of videos of her interacting in totally normal ways with her children, right?
Yes.
Okay. None of those were shown today?
Correct.
Okay. On page 2 of the 92-page summary that you did, line 2585 says, from Lori Bell to Audrey Baratario. Do you recall that conversation?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Audrey. This is Lori. I would love to talk to you sometime. Text me or call me. I'm excited to be able to talk to you about what we both know. You recall that?
I do.
All right. So what was the relationship between Audrey and Chad?
Audrey met Chad in the fall of 2018, and she viewed Chad as a spiritual advisor, someone that she looked up to for spiritual guidance.
The leader.
Yes.
Okay. Chad had a number of women that he talked to over text or over the phone. Is that correct?
A small number. Yes.
Small number. Okay. Melanie Gibb, she was one of those?
Yes.
Okay. Melanie Bedreau, she was one of those?
Correct.
Okay. Anybody else?
There was a reference to Julie Rowe, but I don't recall that I saw specific messages between Chad and Julie Rowe.
What about Zulema Pastinez?
Yes.
She was also in the group?
Correct.
Okay. In fact, there were a number of women that were in the group with Chad, right? He was kind of the leader of this group.
Along with Lori, yes.
Okay. You went over a number of texts in here, and I'm not going to go through them because, well, we don't have the time. Not every text was about the affair that Lori was having with Chad, right?
Correct.
There were a lot of normal texts, right?
Between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow?
On Lori for Style or the Lolly Time at iCloud. I mean, there were just a lot of normal texts on there, right?
Could you clarify between which parties?
Sure. There were texts about Lori doing normal mom stuff, right, to various people.
Yes.
Okay. There were texts about Lori talking to her friends just about her day, right?
Yes.
Okay. There were texts about Lori taking her kids to school.
Yes.
Texts about Lori taking JJ or Tylee to doctor's appointments.
Yes.
Texts about Lori giving them fast food or going out to restaurants.
Yes.
There were texts about the nuances or the ins and outs of life, like paying bills, those kinds of things.
Correct.
Okay. And based on your review of the text as a whole, as the state has indicated, you reviewed all of these texts or a large number of these texts. Isn't it true that Lori was, for all intents and purposes, a pretty good mother?
With the exception of what happened to her children, yes.
All right. And based on your review of the text as a whole, Lori seemed to have led a pretty normal life until she met Chad Daybell. Is that correct?
Yes, I would say so.
Okay. In your review of the totality of these records that you reviewed, did it ever come up what Lori's prior Wi-Fi passwords have been over the last 13 years? Prior to 2019, the 13 years prior?
I have a vague recollection of some exchanges between Lori Vallow and Charles Vallow as they moved residences along that line, but I could not tell you what those passwords were.
Would it surprise you if I told you that Lori's go-to password was the number 5, kids, and the number 4, ever?
Objection,
kids
Your Honor.
forever.
Assumes facts not in evidence.
Overruled.
That could certainly be the case.
Okay. You don't recall seeing that ever come up in any text or anything?
Off the top of my head, I'm sorry, I can't remember. I may have seen that in my review of the iCloud. I don't recall specifically if I have or not.
Okay. On the particular day that you indicate where Alex sent Lori a text about setting up her new password, is it possible that Lori was busy doing other things and that Alex was there to set up the password and he couldn't remember the 5 Kids Forever password, and he told the guy who set it up that it was just too many kids? Is that
Objection.
possible?
Objection calls for speculation.
That's sustained.
Did you, in your review, find anything to support your theory that too many kids meant that Lori had too many children, as in Tylee and JJ were too many?
No, the password stands alone.
Okay. Do you know who Nathan Pacheco is?
I do not.
Okay. On page 49 of your text, so you didn't do any research as to who Nathan Pacheco is?
I didn't.
You didn't Google him?
No.
Would it surprise you to know that he's a fairly famous religious singer?
I wouldn't doubt that.
Okay. And would it surprise you to know that that Lori had a crush on him?
Judge, I'm going to object to this. It calls for speculation, relevance.
Well, it's contained within text that were read into the record, so the relevance objection's overruled, and I'll allow some latitude there as it needs to be relevant.
Sure.
I have no knowledge of that.
Okay. So it's possible that Lori and Chad's exchange about, because this was an abnormal exchange, right, where Chad acquiesces to Lori's death percentage or whatever, what have you, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So this is an aberration of what normally happens.
Yes.
Chad normally says, this person is light, this person is dark, this is the number, and everybody just kind of goes along with it.
That's right.
All right. So if Lori had a crush on this guy and was joking with Chad about, hey, I think he's light, and Chad's joking with her about, I think he's dark, that would make more sense. That would put it into context, right?
Objection calls for speculation. Defense counsel is attempting to testify.
I'll sustain that.
Okay. In your review of these 100,000 or so records, I don't know how many you said that you've reviewed, there was not another time where Chad would give some type of a death percentage, and then Lori would override him that you can remember.
That's correct.
Okay. Did you ever hear any references to anybody named Ira and Ralph?
Yes.
Okay. And did you research who Ira and Ralph might be?
I believe that Ira was the name of another entity that supposedly was in Charles Vallow's body. Ralph, again, I believe is a name of another entity, and I'm sorry, I can't recall who Ralph was attached to.
Okay. You ever watch Romancing the Stone? You ever seen that movie?
Kirk Douglas?
Yeah.
Michael Douglas?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would it surprise you to know that is just a reference to the Romancing the Stone people?
Judge, I'm going to object. There's facts, assumes facts and not evidence, relevance.
If I may respond, Judge.
Go ahead.
He's testified that he's reviewed all these records. He's seen Ira and Ralph come up a number of times. And I'm just asking if he knew the reference, if he actually did any research on it.
I'll allow that for that purpose.
Thank you. Did you do any research on it?
Well, that's a difficult proposition because these are names that Chad Daybell is assigning to these individuals. I don't know how I would do research on the name Ira or Ralph outside of the context of the case.
So no. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Very good. So on page 51 of your summary, you indicate that JJ was talking crazy and that he was saying crazy stuff. You recall that?
Yes.
He was at a 0. And so my question is, what happens when a person reaches a 0 percentage?
According to the case, that means that they're ready for death.
They're ready for death, or they're dead, or they're what?
Well, clearly at that particular point in time, JJ wasn't dead, but within 6 weeks he was.
So basically, you also testify that depending on your scale or depending on how you want to look at it, they could be either 100 or 0, and those percentages would be towards death, right?
Judge, I'm going to object is vague. It's not his scale. And
He testified. I apologize.
Sorry, and
it's a compound question and states facts not in evidence, and it's confusing.
I don't believe it states facts not in evidence. That did come out, that it is a compound question. And Mr. Thomas, if you'd specify what the scale is you're talking about again.
Very good.
In other words, clarify it's not the witness's scale.
Right. Page 20, line 2660. Let's turn to it.
And I apologize, counsel, which email address 2660?
It's on slide number 20. It's line number 2660. So I'll just read it to you. Text from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Quote, she is at 0.13. I turned up the pain to 10 and placed a spiritual virus in her. He is at 99.99. Raphael visited him and told him to follow Amy into the light. I also assured him that James would love and take care of his mommy, which he will with all of his heart and soul. Do you recall that?
I do.
You wrote that or you copied that from the text?
I cut and pasted from the iCloud, yes.
All right, and you testified today that either being a low percentage or a high percentage could mean death. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
All right. So basically, isn't it your understanding that you really don't have an understanding about what's going on here as far as these percentages go?
I disagree. I think that Chad Daybell's writings were inconsistent, but it's clear that he designated JJ and Tylee and Tammy Daybell as he had them in his death percentages, and all three of those individuals ended up dead.
Okay. It's not possible that this was all about fantasy, that it's more of a Dungeons and Dragons, pull out your 64-sided dice type of thing. Is that possible?
Absent the three people being killed, perhaps.
Okay. All right. So on page 24, I'm sorry, page 23. Page 23, there's some talk about using swords of light to cut through someone's aura. That's not real, right?
I don't think it's real.
It's fantasy.
Yes.
All right. On page 17, line 2706, it reads from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. I just got the letter from the insurance company saying that I'm not the beneficiary. It's a spear through my heart. Who did you think he changed it to, Brandon or probably Kay? He left nothing for JJ, right? You remember that?
Yes.
And this is from Lori to Chad. Her main concern was that Charles had left nothing for JJ, her son, correct?
That's what she states.
All right. On page 22, line 2603, this is from Chad to Lori. Quote, this trip to Utah had a lot of finality to it. I was told extreme changes are coming from me and to Utah. I welcome them both. This was on July the 18th, 2019. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. What types of changes were coming to the state of Utah?
I have no idea.
You didn't look into that?
That's a statement from Chad Daybell, in my opinion, as his position as a revelator. So I'm not privy to he predicted earthquakes in Utah and other things.
And did they happen?
Did Chad Daybell's revelations come to pass?
Right.
Not in my opinion.
Okay. So it was all fantasy. Correct?
Not everything was fantasy.
Okay. On page 34, line 2043, this is from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. Quote, from Mel B, semicolon, or I'm sorry, colon, from Father, my sweet daughter, you have done well. I am very pleased. You have been prepared for every moment and surrounded by those who love you. And it goes on. And you indicate that Father, in that particular context, you thought was Chad Daybell. Is that right?
Yes.
Is it possible that Melanie Boudreau got her own revelation from God or Heavenly Father?
I think in the line that follows, Lori makes a reference to Chad that was a sweet message. Can you read that? Can you tell me the next line?
That's a very nice message Mel B received from Lori to Chad.
Right.
So you think that the message was from Chad to Melanie Boudreau?
Yes.
Okay. And do you have any evidence of that?
Only that Melanie Boudreau frequently referred to Chad Daybell as dad or her father.
Okay. Okay. On page 41 of your summary, you make reference to a chart. I'll just read it to you. Line 1774. This is on July the 30th, 2019. Text from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. Yes, we might need to release a little steam when we talk. Anyway, this is the chart that checks what percentage mortals are still in their body. It worked for my friend's wife who died, my neighbor, George Bush, Stan Lee, etc. So, did you recover the chart?
I did not. I looked for it extensively and could not find it.
Okay. Did you ask any other agents to look for the chart?
Yes.
And nobody could find the chart?
Nobody could find the chart.
So it was probably just something that he made up, some fantasy.
I don't know if it's that or if it just didn't attach to the message.
Okay. On page 47 and 48, you indicated in your testimony that Chad Daybell used religious concepts to manipulate others. Is that correct?
Yes.
What did you mean by that?
Chad Daybell purported himself to be a visionary man who could discern light and dark spirits. He claimed to receive revelations, and he would use those things to his own selfish purposes.
To manipulate a lot of people?
Yes.
Including Lori Daybell?
At times.
Thank you. No further questions.
Redirect.
Yes, Judge, briefly. Defense counsel asked you about Chad Daybell manipulating people. The last few questions, do you recall those?
Yes.
Okay. Was there evidence that Lori Vallow manipulated Chad Daybell?
Yes.
Was there evidence that Lori Vallow manipulated Alex Cox?
Yes.
And defense counsel asked you about fantasy versus fiction or fantasy versus reality. Do you remember those questions?
Yes.
For Alex Cox, in your review of all of the evidence, including the iCloud, did Alex Cox believe the religious information given him by Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell?
Yes.
Did Alex Cox act on the religious information provided to him by Lori Vallow?
How do you mean?
Did he move up to Rexburg?
Yes.
Did he move near his sister?
Yes.
Did Alex Cox believe the information given to him by Chad and Lori that he was Lori's protector?
Yes.
Now, defense counsel asked you about a bunch of women, some of whom we've heard from, some of whom we haven't. Did you remember those lines of question?
Yes.
How many of those women had their children dead and buried in Chad Daybell's backyard?
None.
Nothing further.
All right, that'll conclude the testimony of this witness then. Counsel, given the time, I'll suggest we go ahead and break for the day. Is the state going to be prepared to call another witness in the morning?
Yes, Judge. May this witness be excused?
Any objection from the defense?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you, agent, for testifying. You can be excused from any subpoena. The bailiff will assist you out of the courtroom. Thank you, sir. Okay, at this time, we'll go ahead and take our afternoon recess till tomorrow. Given that we're concluding for the day, again, I'll admonish the jurors, as you've done every day, thank you for your service, and continue to not investigate the case. Don't look up the case anywhere. If you see the case being reported in the media, please don't follow that. Turn your attention away from it. Don't discuss the case with each other or anyone else. We will reconvene tomorrow morning at 8:30 for additional testimony, and we'll adjourn for the day.
All right, please.